All right, Chairman Kanagas, we are recording.
Okay, Ms. Summers, would you conduct your welcome logistics and reflection?
Absolutely. Thank you, Chair Kanagas. Members will be short since I'm also asking you all to go over what I originally asked. Reminder to check your spreadsheet rationales and flag anything for Lucas. I'm sharing my screen over here. Y'all please let me know if I'm, a step behind you per usual because y'all are so sharp, but I'll have it up to look at the rationales and make sure that we're accurately summarizing how the group feels. In terms of our agenda today, I'm anticipating us to talk about the reading standards. Chair Kernagis and Vice Chair Hilliard, that's absolutely up to y'all. If we were to move forward with the reading standards today, there are 130 standards by my count left to do, and we have about 3 hours and 35 minutes to accomplish that today in the event that that's how y'all want to move forward. Quick reminder about discussion questions, make sure you have those ready, your feedback documents, the 3 million digital and physical papers I gave you, continue to use those as they're helpful. And if I can help remind or reorient folks, please let me know. I know it's always hard to be in person, do the thing, take a break, come back online. I myself am feeling a little disoriented, so please reach out if y'all need anything. Finally, in terms of written and spoken public comment, we did not receive any request to speak at this meeting. So public comment has been canceled, and that's at your leadership team's discretion how they'd like to spend that time. I have not received any written public comment prior to me signing on to this meeting. I will double check my email right now, since it was technically due 3 minutes ago, to ensure that there were no other comments. If I do have them, I will flag them for you, and I will also put them in your folders just like always. And we'll have that same protocol for all of these virtual meetings: potential public comment, potential written comment. And if you have any questions, let me know. Members, any clarifying or logistics questions before we conduct our formal meeting? Okay, I'll pass it over to Chair Kernagis and Vice Chair Hilliard.
Thank you, Ms. Summers. It is now 3:33, and I call this meeting of the English Language Arts ELA Standards Recommendation Committee, SRC, to order. Vice Chair Hilliard, please call the roll to determine a quorum. The appropriate response is here, present, or nothing.
Ms. Baird,
Present.
Ms. Dockery,
Present.
Mr. Hilliard present, Ms. Now,
Present.
Ms. Singletary,
Present.
Dr. Stout,
Present.
Ms. Winters,
Present.
and Chair Kernagis.
Present.
Chair Kernagis, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Vice Chair Hilliard. As this committee is meeting virtually, we have prepared a statement of necessity. Ms. Summers, please read that statement.
Absolutely. The Tennessee State Board of Education's English Language Arts, ELA, Standards Recommendation Committee, SRC, called an electronic meeting today at 3:30 p.m. Central Time on September 22nd, 2025. This meeting is called to continue proposing revisions to the ELA standards. Due to the time-sensitive nature of the items on the committee's agenda and the fact that committee members reside across the state, it was determined that a physical quorum of members could not be assembled in Nashville for the purposes of this meeting. And as such, this meeting should be conducted electronically. Notice of this meeting was posted on the State Board's website, along with the agenda and instructions for accessing the meeting.
Thank you, Ms. Summers. TCA 8-44-108 requires all votes taken during electronic meetings of the board be taken by the call of the roll. As this is a virtual meeting that's being recorded, I move that the recording serves as the minutes of this meeting. Do I have a second?
I second.
Thank you. Vice Chair Hilliard, call the roll, please.
The appropriate response is aye or no. Ms. Baird,
Aye.
Ms. Dockery,
Aye.
Mr. Hilliard, aye. Ms. Now,
Aye.
Miss Singletary,
Aye.
Dr. Stout,
Aye.
Miss Winters,
Aye.
and Chair Kernakis.
Aye.
Chair Kernakis, you have 8 aye votes and 0 no votes.
Thank you. Vice Chair Hilliard, the motion passes. Members, advisors, and staff, please use the hand raise function on the screen so I monitor that. If you need to jump in, just yell Chair Kernagis out loud to be recognized. And otherwise, hold on to it till I call on you. Since we're meeting virtually, I ask that all speakers identify themselves before addressing the group. Participants, please mute yourself if you're not speaking. For the benefit of all Tennesseans, please avoid the overuse of jargon and acronyms where possible, and define any acronym if it's used. We'll now proceed with our next item on the agenda. Chair Hilliard, where are we?
All right. So if everybody has the spreadsheet available, you can obviously see from Brianna's shared screen, but if you have your own copy of the spreadsheet pulled up, we are on reading standard 4, and we completed K through 5 of reading standard 4. So we're now on to the 6th grade version of that particular standard. That is cell G81 on the reading tab, if you want to see that. There are 10 standards within reading. The final cell we'll need to get to, if we're going to cover all of them today, is going to be G211. So like Brianna said, we've got about 130 remaining. I think it would be a reasonable and exciting goal if we could aim to get those reading standards done in our meeting today.
I agree. Thank you, Co-Chair Hilliard. What I'd like to do is to have everybody draw their attention to the cell that we're working on as Vice Chair Hilliard is making his edits. Go on to the next cell so we're ready to move ahead and you're ready with any questions. So what I'll say is that here it is in front of you. If you have any questions or comments, let us know right now, or we will approve this as written. Questions, comments?
Really quickly, before we get into this particular standard, I did just want to quickly say, Ms. Summers has already said it, but I have written all the rationales, and I have finalized the standard language for all of the standards we've gone through up to this point. So that's all language, all foundational literacy, all speaking and listening, all writing, and the first approximate third of the reading standard. So if when you guys have a chance, if you can take a look at those and just let me know if you have any feedback on anything related to that. But yeah, let's go ahead and look at the 6th grade iteration of the standard 4. So just to remind everybody where we're at, the cornerstone is interpret words and phrases that they're used in a text, including connotative and figurative meanings, and analyze how specific word choices shape meaning or tone. The 6th grade version of this standard reads, analyze the impact of author's specific word choice on meaning and tone, including figurative language such as repetition, simile, metaphor, personification, and hyperbole. I propose that we make the edit we have made consistently throughout on turning such as into EG, if everyone is on board with that, just for the sake of consistency.
I
But
agree.
that is
Does
the
anybody
only
have any problem
edit
with
I
that?
have.
Is that okay with everybody? All right,
Sure.
hearing no objections, let's move on.
Okay, that is the only edit I have to that particular standard. So if no one else has anything, we can move on to 7th grade. Or not, sorry, 7th grade, 6th grade RI, since we have a corresponding RI standard.
Let's do it. Can you read the objective as printed?
As the standard as written?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. Analyze the impact of author's specific word choice on meaning and tone, including figurative and technical language. Elsewhere, we have moved away from the use of technical language. We've just been saying figurative and connotative. We've chosen to remove reference to the word technical in the cornerstone. So I think it would make sense to eliminate the words and technical in this particular standard just to correspond with that decision we've made elsewhere. Does anyone have comments on that?
Patty? Are we losing
Concur.
anything?
Nope,
Okay.
don't think we are.
All right, we agree with you.
I have a question. I thought we were changing technical language to like subject specific.
That was domain specific. We changed domain specific to discipline and subject
Got
specific.
it. Sorry. All right. I'm gonna need refreshers.
It's been a week and a half, so I think we'll probably all have little things like that.
Vice Chair Hilliard, can I flag something?
Yes,
Just
absolutely.
the TDOE feedback was really just flagging that in grades 6 through 8, the wording of this standard differs from the way it appears in K5 and 9 through 12. And I just wanted to flag that it's that first part of the standard that you'll see. If you look at the cell above in 5RL, you'll see the determine the meaning of words and phrases as they are used in a text. That is excluded from the wording in grades 6 through 8. And I just wanted to flag that for your panel's consideration.
It seems like the language in K through 5 is determine the meaning. In 6 through 8, it's just analyze. And then in 9 through 12, it says analyze. And then there's a subsequent part of the standard that says interpret the meaning. So yes, that is correct.
Sounds like a progression in academic language going from level to level. And it seems to me to be appropriate. Determine, to analyze, and interpret.
Does anyone have thoughts on that?
So we want to keep it as written with the changes that co-chair Hilliard put in there. Is everybody okay with that?
I have a thought.
Go ahead.
Okay, so this might just be my interpretation of it, but it feels like to me interpret seems lower than analyze to me, so it feels weird that because determine almost feels similar to interpret to me, and then we move away from determine or interpret and then have analyze and interpret. So I'm not sure if that is a clear progression, but I'd like to hear other people's thoughts on that. As well, a second note is for our RL, we have examples. We have the example, the EG, but is there a reason why we don't have EG for the RI versions?
I can speak to that really fast. That is something we've been doing consistently. We have been providing examples for RL standards in this progression, but not for RI. That is how they were proposed to us, and we largely just adopted that language. So that is something in corresponding with our progression, though I think that's worth talking about. I think if we wanted to kind of mimic the language of the 9 through 12 standards, which, like I said, says, I'll just read the 9-10 standard. It says, analyze the cumulative impact of specific word choices on meaning and tone, such as evoking a literary historical context, semicolon, interpret the meaning of figurative and connotative words and phrases. We could probably do something similar to that by saying, analyze the impact of author-specific word choice on meaning and tone, semicolon, interpret the meaning of figurative language, which would mimic what we're doing in the 9 through 12 standards, and therefore create more of a clear progression from 6-8 to 9-12, if that's what we feel is the appropriate choice.
That sounds good to me.
Is everybody good with that?
Yes.
Okay.
Just 1 second, because that will require me just typing that out really fast. But if you don't mind, we can take a look at the upcoming standard in just a second, if you guys want to turn your attention to that.
Let's do that.
That edit has been made. Are we ready to move on to 7th grade now?
Yes.
Okay. So the 7th grade RL standard reads as analyze the impact of authors' specific word choice on meaning and tone, including figurative language such as repetition, simile, metaphor, personification, hyperbole, and imagery. I would propose the standards we made, the edits we make to that standard are essentially the same as what we made to the 6th grade standard. We would make that list into an EG instead of a such as, and we would change the structure of the standard such that it would read analyze the impact of author's specific word choice on meaning and tone, semicolon, interpret the meaning of figurative language, just to mimic what we did in the 6th grade standard.
I'm good with that. Are there any objections? Annie, would you be able to put your light on the porch there so we can see your face?
Sure. I think the sun keeps shifting on me.
Okay.
We are all jealous that you're on the porch, though, just FYI.
Yeah.
And just letting you all know, my attention is primarily focused on the spreadsheet, so I'm not seeing the cameras. Chair Carnegie, you're doing a great job of flagging when people have comments, so thank you for that. Just letting you know in case if I seem to be moving on without taking into account your feedback, I'm not necessarily seeing the cameras, so I apologize in advance if anything.
Not a problem. All right, so we're good with the changes then? We can move on.
Okay. The 7th grade RI standard is analyze the impact of author's specific word choice on meaning and tone, including figurative and technical language. I think we would make very similar edits to what we did in the 6th grade RI standard. We would eliminate the reference to technical, and then we would change the end instead of including figurative language to interpret the meaning of figurative language. So again, just repeating the edits we've made elsewhere in this progression.
I'm okay. Everybody else okay? Hearing no objections, let's move ahead.
Okay. The 8th grade standard reads very similarly, so
That's
I think
better,
that
Annie.
will likely be. I think that it will likely be similar. 8th grade standard for RL reads analyze the impact of author's specific word choice and meaning and tone, including figurative language such as repetition, simile, metaphor, personification, hyperbole, imagery, and verbal irony. If we were going to keep the edits we've made elsewhere, we would change that such as list to an EG list, and we would change including to interpret the meaning of.
Any objection? Hearing none, let's move on. I think that's a great suggestion.
Okay. And then last in the 6 through 8 progression here, we have 8 RI, analyze the impact of author specific word choice on meaning and tone, including figurative and technical language. If we're going to keep with our edits elsewhere, we'll delete and technical, and then change including to interpret the meaning of.
Thank you. Now, are there any objections to that? No? Well, before we move to the high school, I had some discussions and, we dealt with a number of national tragedies here. Where are we teaching the kids to determine the difference between fantasy and reality? I mean, and if you have them read the Hunger Games and watch the Hunger Games, where do they know that that's fantasy? So many of the people that we've got doing these crazy acts in our society now haven't been able to distinguish the fantasy from the reality. Are there any standards that we have that would encourage that to happen as we read and study and analyze? I'm putting that question out to the staff and to the committee. I don't know if this is the place to do that or not. But I think it's
I would say, yeah, I mean, I would say this standard is drawing a distinction between literal meaning and figurative meaning like we've done elsewhere. And I think there's an extent there. I don't think it's exactly what you're referring to, but because I think it's really referring to more as like a literary device, as a choice of conveying figurative meaning rather than distinguishing between fiction and nonfiction. I would say, as someone who's been kind of going over these standards the last few days, writing rationales, I think Dr. Stout's recommendation that we draw a clear distinction between characters and figures in the narrative writing, I think actually does accomplish that to an extent, where we are clearly demarcating the difference between a character and a figure. I thought, as I looked back over, I thought those edits were thoughtful, and so I think there's an extent to which that particular edit is also speaking towards that.
So you don't feel there's any need to have them particularly distinguish between fantasy and reality as they are becoming involved and engrossed in a work?
I personally don't know if this would be the place. I think I don't, but I also frankly don't know if I see within the standards that we have currently a really obvious place to include that kind of distinction. But I'm also, there are a lot of standards out there, so I likely could be forgetting something. So if someone else has another location within the standards where they think that,
I mean,
that kind of,
I do believe
should be
there's a
incorporated.
standard that talks about distinguishing between the different genres, correct? I mean, so that would, if you're reading science fiction or if you're reading mystery, like there is a place to have that conversation that's not as deep as, I guess, what you're trying to say.
Okay.
Yes, I think Tammy has her hand raised.
Go ahead, Tammy.
Oh, Tammy, I think you're breaking up. She is on a bus from, I guess, her school to another school to play volleyball. Tammy, if you want to text me a response, I'd be happy to read it on the record if your audio is giving you a hard time.
If this doesn't resonate with anybody, then we can just forget it. But if we need to maybe put it in the parking lot and see if there's a place where this distinction can be drawn in, I think we'd be doing a great service to our society through the education and language arts if we can help them to determine when they're not real.
Chair Cornegas, I think you'll see, as Nicole was saying, in reading standard 9, it deals with, it is asking students to discern differences between types of text and genres of text. So I think that you'll see some areas there where you can apply that thinking.
Okay.
I'm pulling it
Thank
now,
you.
if helpful.
Thanks.
Sorry for the whiplash.
I was just also going to add, I think we've talked a lot about digital literacy. I feel like in some of the earlier standards, we kind of beefed up the digital literacy. That's where I see that more coming into play, especially by 2030. And so I think that's really important that, especially online, students can differentiate between fiction and nonfiction, fact and disinformation, fantasy and reality.
Thank you, Catherine.
Yeah, and Nicole knows the reports better than I do at this point. Thank you, Nicole, for doing that. I want to say either public survey report 1 or 2 had some public feedback around, like, sort of speaking to Dr. Stout's point about like misinformation and biases, and I can try and pull that up. The other piece I'd offer, I taught social studies, that's my background. There are some social studies practices that talk about like establishing validity, comparing and contrasting multiple sources, fact checking, biases. And those are practice standards that apply at K-12. They're sort of differentiated in themselves, but that could be one idea to work off of for the committee's consideration. I can put that in. I'll email it. It might be hard for me to put it in the chat with me sharing my screen.
Was Tammy able to get any information to you, Brianna?
I don't have a text message yet, but as soon as I get it, I will.
All right. Well, I don't want to
She did.
belabor the discussion. Before we left junior high, I really think this is where the roots of these ideas come in when kids can't determine. So let's move on. I get off this box.
Tammy did put information in chat.
Oh, thank you, Patty. Or Ms.
She
Patty.
noted there is a standard in writing that discusses validity and reliability also.
Okay. Excellent.
Are we ready to resume with
Yes,
the
we are,
E1,
Co-Chair
E2?
Hilliard. Why don't you go ahead and read the next one?
Fantastic. So continuing with the same cornerstone, E1, E2, RL, CS4 is analyze the cumulative impact of specific word choices on meaning and tone, such as evoking a literary historical context, semicolon, interpret the meaning of figurative and connotative words and phrases. I would say since we've mimicked this particular structure in the 6 through 8 standards, it makes sense to maintain that structure here so that we have consistency in structure, that analyze and then interpret. I see a such as, so I think that such as should likely change to an EG in keeping with what we've done elsewhere, but that is the only edit that I have.
Anyone else have an edit? Hearing none, let's move on.
Okay. And then the E1, E2 RI standard reads, analyze the cumulative impact of specific words and phrases on meaning and tone, such as evoking a literary historical context, interpret the meaning of figurative and connotative words and phrases, and interpret the intent of allusions used in a text. So it's nearly identical to the RL standard. It just includes that reference to interpreting the intent of allusions used in a text. So I think the such as changing to EG edit should likely be mimicked here. I also would be curious to hear, I don't know if I completely understand why there's language about interpreting the intent of allusions used in informative texts, but not in literary texts. But I'd be happy to hear if someone feels like they understand why that distinction was made.
Dr. Nell, what do you think?
Well, first of all, before we move on from that, in the informational standard, we need to put A in front of text. Right now, it just says in text.
Oh yeah,
the standard.
correct.
And it does seem odd if we're going to mention allusions in the informational standard, then it seems to me, especially with the example in the literary standard that's provided, that allusions should also be mentioned.
Are we in agreement with that then, everyone? Hearing no objection, we accept your recommendation.
Then I will go back to the RL standard and just write make identical to RI standard, since they should read verbatim now the same.
Okay. Excellent.
I just wanted to note that Tammy just put an explanation in the chat if that was
Okay.
missed.
Okay, so Tammy is saying, in literature, discussing allusions should be common practice. The group felt that the idea of analyzing allusion was often overlooked in informational texts. Including it in both would give clarity. Okay, so it seems Tammy is in agreement over the idea of putting it in both.
Excellent. Thank you, Tammy.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Tammy. All right. Are we ready to move on to the E3, E4 standards?
As soon as Tammy takes her hand down. There you go. Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay, so E3, E4 reads, analyze the cumulative impact of specific word choices on meaning and tone, such as evoking a literary historical context, interpret the meaning of figurative and connotative words and phrases. I will just quickly say, this might expedite the process. The E3, E4 standards for both RL and RI are identical to the E1, E2 standards. So if we don't feel as though additional rigor needs to be added, we can just simply adopt the edits we made to the E1, E2 standards and bring them down to both of the E3, E4 standards.
Well, I'm all in favor of rigor, and I think I'd like to know where we could add that. Once again, Dr. Now, you deal with this all the time. where can we add the rigor in between E1 and E2 and then E3 and E4? What else can we say to have them think deeply?
Ms. Now here, I mean, I think the rigor comes from the increasing complexity of the text in this grade.
Amy does too. Okay.
That would be my assertion as well.
Patty, did you have a question? No, or you're just praying? I'm sorry. Okay. I was looking at your hands. Okay.
Co-Chair Hilliard, I could be on a lag, but I don't see where we added allusions, and I know that was the conversation. Maybe I just need to refresh.
Yeah, I just for the sake of time, I just wrote make identical to RI standard
Right.
on RL, which will incorporate the language about allusions into the RL standard.
Perfect.
I did not write anything directly about allusions, but the language will get moved up.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Or if we're confident the complexity of the text will add sufficient rigor, then we would make no more changes, just as you suggested. Is it okay?
I did
Yeah.
want to mention, I'm not advocating for it, but the original standard for 11th to 12th grade mentions style. I don't think we have that in our current. I can read out the original standard if you would like me to.
Please do.
Okay. Let's see. Okay, so for RL, it says determine the meaning of words and phrases as they are used in a text, including figurative and connotative meanings. Analyze the impact of specific word choices on meaning and tone, including words with multiple meanings and language that is stylistically poignant and engaging. And then the RI mirrors that with that last bit, multiple meanings and the style.
Okay. Catherine, Dr. Stout, you have a lot to say about style. What do you think about that? Do you think we need to put style back in there?
Always. Yep.
So how can it best be said without being contrived?
Ms. Tucker, can you read the reread that standard that you just read for us again, letting us know that style was left out?
Yes. Sorry, so many tabs right now.
I can
Okay.
put up too, so that we have it side by side, but you go.
Okay, so it says determine the meaning of words and phrases as they are used in a text, including figurative and connotative meanings. Analyze the impact of specific word choices on a meaning and tone, including words with multiple meanings and language that is stylistically, I don't know, I keep tripping over this, stylistically poignant and engaging.
It seems to me what we would do is simply, because they seem to have eliminated any reference to evoking a literary historical context in the 3-4, E3, E4 level, it seems like we would simply sub in that information about stylistically poignant language, or whatever the exact phrasing is, in the EG there, the parenthetical EG, instead of saying evoking a literary historical context. That to me would be that seems to be functionally where it is sitting in the standard.
I would also be curious to hear from those of you who teach 11 and 12, and if you feel like that's essential there or not, because I've never taught 11 or 12.
So in this one, they're not really trying, because this is reading, not writing. They're not really trying to develop the student tone style, but for them to recognize the unique traits of a particular author's style.
Right.
Is stylistically poignant the best way to state that?
I as an 11th and 12th grade teacher at a previous time in my life a few years ago, have always found that phrasing just a touch confusing. Like to be poignant, I understand what it means for language to be poignant. Stylistically poignant seems like it's kind of collapsing two different ideas into one a little bit. I mean, I think I know what they're gesturing at, But I do think that phrasing is perhaps
That's my
just a bit
question.
amorphous.
So I
And I-
typed in the chat just so I'm like a visual person, so sometimes it's helpful to see it. Mr. Co-Chair Hilliard, distinct style and traits of the author's voice is what I believe that translates into. I would have to put it side by side to see how that works in a standard. I probably added way too many words.
I think it's a lot more understandable for the teacher who is going to be expected to follow these standards.
I would agree.
As co-chair Hilliard said, that's difficult to interpret, stylistically poignant. But what you said, I think there's a lot more easily identifiable vocabulary in there.
I don't know if it's exactly what we want, and it's still very much in a draft, but I've kind of thrown together an iteration of this standard in cell I-90. If people want to take a look at that, incorporating Dr. Stout's language, I think it may still be in a work in progress, but I attempted to kind of incorporate those ideas.
I'm satisfied with that, but I don't teach ELA. Catherine, unmute yourself if you're saying something.
Thank you for the reminder. I would just add an or and between style and traits. Distinct style or traits of the author's voice. I don't know the comma. I don't know if you need the comma.
Yeah,
I just put it.
I've just used I've used style. So are you viewing those as different items in a list, or are you saying distinct style and traits of the author's voice as one phrase together? I don't know if that was probably not very.
Oh, that was clear.
No
I think it's fine. I think we're overthinking it. I think it's fine as is.
I think distinct style and traits of the author's voice actually is better. I think the original language is better. I don't think they're two different items. So I changed that. I changed that comma to the word and. I think that's a good edit.
Okay.
Just to clarify, because the original informational standard did not include the language about stylistically poignant. That was the literary standard. The informational standard said, analyze how an author uses and refines the meaning of a key term or terms over the course of a text.
That to me seems like I don't see language in that original standard that isn't captured by what we're saying. I'm open to anyone who disagrees, but I feel like mostly that's captured with the language of the standard. I guess the question would be whether we wanted to include the reference to distinct style and traits of the author's voice in the RI and RL standards, both, which I personally think is valuable in both, since informational and literary writers can both have a distinct style and distinct traits of voice.
Dr. Now, any parting remarks?
I do not love the refine key terms language at all. Just wanted to point it out to make sure that we were all on the same page about a potential difference between the literary and the informational standard. I mean, I think our revision is fine. I did not like stylistically poignant. I thought it lacked objectivity. So I'm good with the revisions as they are.
Okay, thank you. I think we worked that one well, and thank you, Annie, for putting the brakes on there. Let's go to the next one.
Okay, we are on to standard 5. So that's another standard down. Standard 5 cornerstone reads, analyze how and why texts are structured as they are and explain the structure's impact on meaning. So we're thinking about the structure of text and the impact of that structure on meaning as our ultimate objective. Dr. Now, do you have your hand up?
I'm just moved. It's okay. The TDOE feedback here, unless the TDOE wants to keep an eye on their own feedback, that's completely fine with me. But the feedback for the entire R5 cornerstone said, please consider changing the cornerstone standard to the edits made in K5. Analyze how and why texts are structured as they are and explain the structure's impact on meaning. Please consider adding the phrase or purpose to the end to encapsulate informational texts as well.
I personally think that's a useful edit.
I do too. And Banks, was that what you had your hand raised for?
Yes, it is. Sorry, I didn't know if I was flagging the feedback or yeah, it's perfect.
No, you were good. Thank you.
Yeah, perfect.
All right. I'd say that's a great change.
Yeah.
Everybody agree with that?
Yeah, Ms. Now, you're welcome to flag their feedback, and Banks, if you feel like it's particularly pertinent, you're welcome to flag it.
When we were in person, I thought it worked well for someone to keep an eye on the K through 5 grade band and someone to keep an eye on the 6 through 8 and then 9 through 12. I know I personally at the time had the middle grade band. What I just read off was of course it spanned all grade bands, but that would keep everyone from having to scroll up and down the document. But
Thank you.
just a suggestion.
Can we have a volunteer for K5? Raise your hand, please. And the winner is Rosemary. Thank you. And now for 6-8.
I have 6-8.
Who's doing 6-8?
I had it last time.
You'll do it again? Okay, thank you, Lacey. And then for what, 9-12? Do we need that? Who would like 9-12? Nicole's with a bunch of volleyballers, so that's not going to happen.
I can if nobody else. Or
All right, Rosemary, you're on. Thank you. I appreciate your volunteering. And if you would just...
I think that was Annie Dockery for 912 and Rosemary for.
Oh, okay. I thought I saw Rosemary's hand up. Thank you, Annie.
I think she volunteered for both. I think she's being really nice.
I did want to flag on the feedback that was just expressed that there was an additional part besides just or purpose. The flag was basically that, you know, of course the cornerstone standard needs to be the same in every grade level. And it's currently different in K5 than it is in 612. And so TDOE's proposal was that we really preferred the K5 wording because it really captures kind of the structure piece. We've really struggled with explaining to teachers the difference between Standard 5 and Standard 3 and the way that the cornerstone words Standard 5 in K5 is really addresses it perfectly in our opinion. So anyway, just wanted to throw that out there for your consideration.
And to kind of piggyback on what he said, it does, as a teacher who teaches the standard, this is my lowest scoring standard. I don't understand the standard. It's a difficult standard to test. It's a difficult standard to understand. So just kind of keep that in mind that this one's a tough one.
Well, that's good input. So do you think it would be easier to understand if we move to the K5 cornerstone?
I mean, I'm fine with the changes either way, but I mean, it makes sense to make them clear across the board.
Okay.
Personally, like the concision and the clarity of the K5 cornerstone. So my vote would be for the K5
Does it lose any rigor if we move back to the K5 cornerstone?
I don't believe so. I mean, we're essentially describing the same task. It's just the cornerstone and 6 through 12 currently adds some additional specificity, but I think that specificity can come through in the grade level standards themselves rather than in the cornerstone.
Okay, so we all okay with the recommendation of TDOE? Yes? All right, hearing no objection, let's put it in.
Okay.
We'll go back to K5 Cornerstone.
Okay. Are we ready to go through the grade level standards now?
Let's roll.
Okay, so kindergarten RL is identify common genre types, examples, fiction, nonfiction, poems, etc. I have changing example to EG since we've done that consistently throughout, and then deleting etc. since we've also consistently been deleting that. But those are the only edits that, a period is also needed.
Okay, we agree with those edits? Okay.
Yes.
Move on.
Okay. And then KRI is identify various text features in a text.
And there was no feedback from the TDOE.
I
Okay.
don't have any suggested edits.
All right, let's roll. Keep it.
Okay. 1RL reads explain major differences between genres, e.g. fiction, nonfiction, poetry. I do not have edits proposed on that.
And there was no feedback from TDOE either.
Okay. Hearing none, let's move on. Approve.
Okay. 1RI reads identify text features to locate key facts or information in a text. I do not have any suggested edits for that.
And again, there were no TDOE feedback.
Okay, hearing no objections, let's move on. That one's
One
approved.
question, not an objection, but I'm assuming that teachers know what this term text features means, or is that a glossary term that needs to be defined?
I think most teachers would likely know what it means, but it definitely needs to be something in the glossary. It is currently in the glossary. The definition in the glossary currently reads components which bring attention to important information in texts, fiction, nonfiction, digital, etc., and include but are not limited to table of contents, glossary, index, chapter titles, headings, captions, footnotes.
Okay.
Is that sufficient for you?
Yeah, I don't like when you use the word in the definition, but other than that, yeah.
Yeah, we do that quite a bit in the glossary, so I think that's something that we'll need to tidy up when we get to the glossary itself. Because I agree, I don't like the word in the definition.
And we're not doing the glossary. Banks is doing that, right?
I believe we're doing the glossary.
Chair Kanigas, great question.
Yes.
Currently, would love this group's thoughts. I have reading standards today, our next meeting, elective standards, the following meeting, supporting language, which would include the glossary. That would be Tuesday the 30th, I believe. And then the final day, sort of wrap up parking lot, see what we need, October.
Okay, thank you. All right, so let's move on then.
Okay, so are we good on 1RI?
Yes.
Okay, then 2RL reads describe the overall structure of a story, including how the beginning introduces the story and the ending concludes the action.
And again, TDOE doesn't have any feedback on that standard.
Do you have any recommended changes, Coach Chair Hilliard?
I do not have any, no.
All right, is there anybody else that has any? Seeing no hands, let's move on. That's approved.
Okay, 2RI reads identify and use various text features to locate key facts or information in a text. So we're essentially just advancing from the previous standard by instead of just identifying text features to now using them. I don't have any suggested edits here.
And neither does TDOE.
Okay, it sounds like everybody likes it. Let's move on.
Okay, 3RL reads refer to parts of stories, dramas, and poems using terms such as chapter, scene, and stanza. Describe how each successive part of a text builds on earlier sections. I think this would be an instance where we would need to use such as, not EG, because I don't believe this would be an EG instance. So I do not currently have proposed edits.
And
So I'd like to,
TDOE,
Oh, go ahead.
Okay. And I just want to add, TDOE doesn't have any feedback on this standard as well.
All right, who had a comment?
This is Catherine. I'd like to say that this is to me, seems like a big jump from second to third grade. And third grade is also a very high stakes test. I know we're not talking about the test, but this seems like a very big jump to me. Because you're adding different genres, and then so you're asking them to find this information while also understanding these different genres.
Any other comments from our elementary staff or from TDOE?
Am I missing where we have already scaffold the teaching of these genres, stories, between dramas, between poems?
The only reference I can see previously would be in the first grade RL standard where we explain major differences between genres. So they have been introduced to the concept of genre, though I do agree that this does feel like a bit of a step.
Especially when we looked at the definition of text features. And I know the text, I mean, we've dropped text features and gone to parts of a story. So that's another jump because text features was like glossary and table of contents. So it just seems like a really big jump that hasn't been scaffolded properly to me. I don't teach these grades. This is just observation.
Well, is this something that we need to add to the second grade so that it's not such a big jump?
And yes, I was going to make that suggestion for 2R LS CS5. We need to add something in there to introduce them to it or incorporate it in second grade so they'd be familiar with it in third grade. But they are actually in third grade referring to parts of stories, dramas, and poems using terms such as chapters, scenes, and stanzas. They are doing that in third grade, but I don't see it in second. So we may want to introduce it in second grade.
I agree. There does seem to be a big jump. I was trying to see what the original standard was before we changed. Does anybody have the originals out?
I can pull it, Liam.
Here they are. Okay.
It's 2 RICS5.
Yes.
And y'all, yeah,
Somebody
feel free to
put
put me.
glossary up, the glossary of text features. See, none of that is about stanzas and chapters for the text features.
Oh,
Just
sorry.
for clarification there, the text features is in the RI segment of this progression, and
But
that
the-
we're looking at the RL segment of this progression right now. So the text features are showing up in third grade, they're just showing up in the RI version of the standard.
But it does seem like there should be something in there around the poems. Because there is a big jump from first to third.
I think, at least in my opinion, the jump is going from just talking about stories to talking about stories, dramas, and poems, and also thinking about chapters, scenes, and stanzas. So I wonder if in the 2RL standard, if it said describe the overall structure of stories, dramas, and poems, including how the beginning introduces the story and the ending concludes the action, that might kind of begin to bridge that gap. But that's just the first idea that came to mind.
I like your idea. It makes it general enough, yet it requires some reference at that grade level. Leanne, did you have a question?
Well, I was just noticing how we added in first grade, e.g., fiction, nonfiction, poetry. But in second grade, we didn't specify anything other than story.
I think we're kind of like throwing these genres around story and drama
Yeah.
like they're the same and they're not.
Right. It does look that way. Feels like there needs to be a better flow.
I would move to go along with
I
Vice
mean,
Chair Hilliard's.
kindergarten says the same thing as first grade, but they just identify, whereas first grade explains. But then second grade moves straight to describe overall structure, but it doesn't really get into the different things. So it feels a little choppy and disconnected.
Coach Chair Hilliard, can you read your suggestion again for the second grade, your change?
Right. My suggestion was just to incorporate the prepositional phrase of stories, dramas, and poems from the third grade RL standard to the second grade RL standard, so it isn't just focused on stories. Describe the overall structure of stories, dramas, and poems, including how the beginning introduces the story and the ending concludes the action.
I like that.
Do you think that addresses what we need to do in terms of introducing that concept at that level so that it's not quite such a shock at the third grade level?
Yes, I agree with that, using the prepositional of story and then adding the drama, poems, and stanzas. I agree with co-chair Hilliard.
Okay.
And I would even say, well, yeah, it looks like in first grade we're already talking about poetry, so that makes sense to me.
Makes sense to me.
All right, I see some consensus, Coach Hilliard. Let's go ahead and put in your recommendation at the second grade level.
I just did.
Great. All
Okay.
right, let's move on then.
So with that, now do we feel as though the progression to third grade is a little more scaffolded? Refer to parts of stories, dramas, and poems using terms such as chapter, scene, and stanzas. Describe how each successive part of a text builds on earlier sections.
Yeah, I heard consensus on that.
Okay. Then we can move to 3RI, use text features to locate information relevant to a given topic efficiently. I don't love the placement of that word efficiently. Is that meant to modify locate?
I believe so.
I don't love efficiently. Effectively, maybe. If we're going to go that route.
Yeah.
Well, efficiently wants them to do it quickly so that it doesn't take them forever. Two
But
different
you
concepts.
definitely want to do it effectively as well. So
Yes.
I would say effectively, yes.
So we could say effectively and efficiently.
That pretty well describes what we would ask them to do.
How do we feel about that?
I would go with effectively and efficiently. Doing it right and then doing it quickly.
Okay.
I don't know how efficient I expect. What's the second graders, third graders to be? You know, like these are babies. I think effectively is fine. I don't want to pile on.
All right.
So do we just want to change efficiently to effectively?
I think that's fine. And if you would ask me the difference between the two, I would struggle to give you a working definition of the.
Do we even need either?
Well, that's why
I guess what they're trying to I guess what they're trying to gesture at here is that by using text features, you can find information more quickly than you would otherwise. Like if you use a table of contents, you can go to the place where you need to go more quickly than if you just flip through a book until you find it.
Well,
so I think that's what they're trying to suggest with efficiently. Though that is obviously a little.
we're moving from the second grade standard where they identify and use various text features, locate key facts. And now we're using those text features to locate information relevant to the topic. So to me, that's moving us towards understanding and using evidence, text evidence. And whenever we discuss text evidence in other standards, then we talk about the relevant and effective use of it. So if we eliminate effectively and or efficiently, then I feel like the progression between the second and the third grade standard, it needs something there because it seems as if we're regressing.
That makes sense. So is our consensus then to use the word effectively in lieu of efficiently?
Yes, I'm on board with that.
Yes.
Would you read it again the way it's gonna be, please?
Right. With this edit, it would read: use text features to locate information relevant to a given topic effectively.
What if we move the placement of it?
Yeah, I really hate the placement
Yes.
of it,
Yeah.
but I thought I was nitpicking.
We're all on the same page.
I mean, the problem is I don't know, other than splitting an infinitive, I don't know how to say it in a way that makes it especially clear.
I think
I mean, we could say use.
oh,
Yeah, go
yeah, I was gonna say you move it to the beginning of the sentence, but we're starting everything with a verb because it would be effectively used is what you probably should say.
Use text features effectively.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Effectiveness comes out in a test, whether you can do it or not. So all we're telling them is do it and do it. I agree with you. I thought if you're not going to use efficiently, I wouldn't use anything there. Because we're asking them to do all these standards effectively.
I mean, I do think there's because oftentimes we'll move from just kind of like exploring something to starting to use it a little more effectively. There's kind of this progression, especially in the K-5 progression, of just exposure to this thing at all, and then we start to ask them to do it adequately. So I do think the word effectively is an attempt to move from, hey, can you even find the table of contents, and can you use it basically, to now we're asking you to actually use it effectively and with some degree of capability.
Okay, read it one more time and we'll try to get consensus.
Okay, so I believe the proposed edit would be to say use text features effectively to locate information relevant to a given topic.
Everybody in agreement with that?
Yes.
Okay, hearing no objections, I say we got a good one. Let's move on.
Okay, let me make that edit really fast. Okay, now we have 4RL, which reads: refer to the structural elements of poems, dramas, and stories when explaining how those elements differ from each other and contribute to the overall meaning of the text. Do we have any TDOE feedback on that?
Yes. Is it 4RLCS.5?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, the TDOE does have a recommendation, and it states, please consider refining the wording to explain how structural elements of poems, dramas, and stories differ from each other, and refer to those elements when writing or speaking about a text. This clarifies that students are not just referring to structural elements when explaining the differences between them, as they would necessarily have to do that, but rather that they are learning to refer to the elements when talking more broadly about a text.
Okay, so then how would that change the wording of the standard? Did they have a recommendation for the wording?
Please consider finding the wording to explain how structural elements of the poem explaining how structural elements of poems, dramas, and stories differ from each other.
Okay.
I'm just gonna go ahead and pull up the TDOE feedback so I can hopefully maybe copy and paste their language over and we can work from there. So just 1 second as I pull that up. I've got
Oops. I just put the proposed, here we go. Hang on. Trying to navigate the chat here. 1 second. I'm putting the proposed wording into the chat.
okay. Thank you. That would be very helpful. I've got so many tabs up.
Yeah.
I just wanted to
Thank
highlight
you.
that. Thank you. That is super helpful.
Okay. And the proposal is that this would be the entire new standard. We would change this would not be just a portion of the standard. This would be the entire thing, correct?
Right. Yeah. It's really just kind of rewording it for clarity because its current wording is really confusing. Because the feedback was, in its current wording, students they'll necessarily have to refer to the structural elements of poems, dramas, and stories when explaining how those differ from each other. So it doesn't make sense to like guide them to do that. The proposed new wording that we have that the TDOE is suggesting just simply says like, students are explaining how the structural elements of those pieces differ from each other, poems, dramas, and stories. And then they're referring to those elements when writing or speaking about a text. So it's really just a recommended wording for clarity.
I like the TDOE's proposed wording, and I've dropped it into the suggested change
As I do.
box, I-99. If anyone has any comments on that proposed wording.
Yeah, it talks about student use of academic language and making that a part of their conversation. So yeah, I think it's rich.
I like it. It's not that I dislike it. I'm just wondering about the portion that includes when writing or speaking about a text. And I noticed that about the original standard progression too. It's the only standard I believe in that progression that it incorporates that language.
Yeah, you're right.
So it seems just a little out of place to me. But
Yeah,
just that
if we
portion.
were, yeah, if we were going to keep with the structure elsewhere, it's almost like it would end after other. Just read, explain how structural elements of poems, dramas, and stories differ from each other.
Well, again, as I said, that last part refers to them having that information and being able to repeat it when explaining themselves and getting them conversant with the academic language. So I think that's important.
Well, I think my hesitancy to include it comes from the fact that if we're going to include that language there, then every other successive time in which we use that type of language, like in the original 5th grade standard, it said explain, then we would need to include that as well, and to keep in alignment. So,
And I think that's a great idea, Lacey.
I wasn't necessarily proposing the idea. To me, if you're reading about it, then we've already addressed the writing and the speaking portion and the writing and the speaking standards. But again, wow, I'd like to hear other people's thoughts on that.
It also seems to me if you're going to explain how structural elements of poems, dramas, and stories differ from each other, you will necessarily need to refer to those elements when writing or speaking about a text. I mean, explaining something and referring to the thing that you were explaining. I don't know how one explains these structural elements without referring to them. Banks, do you have any thoughts there?
Yeah, I think that's fine. It absolutely, and some of this was coming from a previous iteration of this standard and I just thought this was a better wording, but I would certainly think that that if you take out that final clause, that it's something that we could clarify within the standards guide to help teachers and so forth understand the standard for sure. So I don't think it would negatively impact the standard in a big way or anything.
Okay, as long as it's in the glossary, I can go along with it.
Okay, so the new wording would read, explain how structural elements of poems, dramas, and stories differ from each other. How do we feel about that wording?
Yes, sir.
Okay, then we
Moving
can
on.
move to 4RI, which reads, describe the overall structures of events, ideas, and concepts of information in a text or part of a text. Did we have TDOE feedback on that particular standard?
Oh, no TDOE feedback on that standard.
Okay. Does anyone else have thoughts on this particular standard?
Hearing no recommendations, I say we keep it.
I guess my question is, describe the overall structure of events, ideas, and concept. What is a concept of information? I guess I don't know exactly what that means.
Should it be concepts or information? Is that what it's trying to say? Is that a typo?
Carolyn, what's that mean to you?
No, it's actually in the original standard. I'm sorry. So it's not.
All right.
I would propose just eliminating of information and just saying describe the overall structure of events, ideas, and concepts in a text or part of a text. It seems as though concepts of information is meant to be a technical term, and I have never heard it.
I can say that it appears from the last standards revision that or was inadvertently changed to of. So I think it was actually just a translation of it. So I think that's a good flag for sure.
Okay, thank you. Let's make that change.
So are we just simply eliminating of information like I proposed, or do we feel as though we should change it to or instead of and? I don't love and concepts or information. It sounds a little clunky to me personally, but I'm open to other
Why wouldn't
feedback.
you just say information? What?
Yeah, I think that works too.
I feel like information covers concepts, but concept
Yeah.
doesn't cover information.
Yeah,
I agree.
I think Dr. Stout's correct. So we would just delete concepts of.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I have made that edit. Okay, if we're good there, we can move to 5RL. 5RL reads, explain how a series of chapters, scenes, or stanzas work together to provide the overall structure and contribute to the overall meaning of the text.
No TDOE feedback.
I don't personally have any feedback on this standard.
All right, hearing no recommendations for change, let's accept it and move on.
Okay, 5RI reads, compare and contrast the overall structure of events, ideas, and concepts of information in two or more texts. I would say we definitely want to delete concepts of to match our edit elsewhere.
Yes.
Absolutely. And there's no TDOE concept. Oh gosh. There's no TDOE feedback. Concept.
All right, I think that one's ready. Move on.
Okay. 6RL reads, analyze how a particular sentence, paragraph, or stanza fits into the overall structure of a text. Do we have any TDOE feedback there?
Yes, we
no
do.
feedback.
Okay.
No feedback.
So 6 through 8 says, please consider refining the wording to analyze how the placement of a particular sentence, paragraph, or stanza fits into the overall structure and contributes to the development of theme or plot. Adding the phrase the placement of helps to clarify the difference between this standard and RL3. Adding the phrase and contributes to the development of theme or plot highlights the why piece. Students are analyzing the relationship of structure to the text's meaning. Would you like me to drop the, oh, he already did it. Never mind. Thanks, thanks.
And I can go ahead and just say, based off of, this is Nicole Moore, by the way, based off of the original feedback from the original standards, which is what we analyzed, the number one feedback for this standard was that was pretty much a lot of information to be teaching at 6th grade. So our purpose of changing 6th, 7th, and 8th was to build a progression. In 6th grade, you're going to look at the overall structure. In 7th grade, you're going to look at it from the overall structure and the theme, or I can't exactly see it, but it builds 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. Whereas that was the number one feedback. They wanted clarification of what the standard actually wanted. So just, it says stakeholder feedback has repeatedly asked for clarity to display the concerns about being developmentally appropriate. In the effort to offer scaffolding, we decided to do it that way. So that was just my note for that standard.
Okay, so it seems the question we have for ourselves is whether or not, and I'll drop the TDOE suggested change into I-103, even though we're still having this conversation, just so we have it in front of us and can easily see it. It's whether or not we want to include the language about contributing to the development of theme or plot in 6th grade, or if we want to wait until 7th grade to introduce that concept, is what I'm hearing, I think, is the question we need to decide. So if anyone has thoughts there, I would love to hear them. This is kind of outside of my instructional domain, so I would be curious to hear from people more close to that grade level.
I can see that for sure. I'm wondering if maybe we meet in the middle and maybe say just plot instead of theme and plot in the 6th grade. But I think I'm as well open to just keeping it as it is. I'm just thinking about how does it, I didn't have time to go back and reanalyze, but I think we need to look at how does it build from 5th to 6th, because we don't want to take it down.
Yeah, so
I didn't have time to look at that yet.
I did look at that, and in the 5th grade RL, we are looking at the series of chapters, scenes, or stanzas work together to provide the overall structure, and then we're thinking about how that structure contributes to the overall meaning of the text. So we are moving from choices to impact on meaning. So that is happening previously, and then once again in 7th grade. So there would be a slight alteration there.
So do we want to keep the language as recommended by TDOE?
I think that's worth discussing. I would love to hear more people's thoughts, because I see the intention of the EAT proposal, but I also think I can see the case made by the TDOE as well. So I'm a little of two minds here and would love to hear people's thoughts.
I'm also wondering if we need some more specificity, because when I think about structure in a literary text, I'm thinking about like plot structure, whereas in elementary school, it's looking at the like chapters and those elements. So I'm wondering, like in 6th grade, like I haven't seen what 6th grade benchmarks look like or anything, but I'm wondering, like, are they talking about chapters here, or are they talking about plot structure like exposition, rising action, etc.?
I can tell you from a question that we had today. I mean, it strictly said read paragraphs 1 through 3 and determine how it contributed to the overall structure of the story. And they had to go back and read paragraphs 1 through 3, and they had to tell me that it introduced the characters pretty much. That's what it looks like on a test, like a state test, because that was a state-based question.
Well, Annie, how would you change the standard as it's written to reflect what your question was?
That kind of sounds to me like it's talking about exposition, introducing characters. But that's just one example. So I'm not sure. I'd be curious if Ms. Moore thinks that it needs some more, I guess, defining. I often find this standard a little nebulous and hard to teach because I'm not exactly sure what they're looking for in 8th and 9th grade as well sometimes. So as far as 6th grade, like I've never taught 6th grade. But I'm wondering if plot structure is an accurate catch-all.
I will say that like currently the standards guide for grade 6 for this standard does say that students should learn the kind of the traditional elements of the literary plot, like exposition, rising action, climax, falling action, resolution, all those pieces, just because it helps them, that terminology helps them when they're analyzing structure in later grades. So just kind of getting acquainted with that terminology, you know, and referring to it and that sort of thing does appear in 6th grade currently. So yeah, just wanted to flag that.
Are those things
Thank you.
what needs to be stated in the standard itself as a EG?
I agree that this standard has always been very difficult to teach, and even when we get into the upper grade levels, I always think of it as the relationship of a part to a whole. So I'm struggling with this myself in this middle grade band level because yeah, I think it's the language. And I want to see what others think about that, but it's the contributes to the development of theme or plot. I wish there were a way that we could really specify what that means, because I hear what you're saying. It's those plot elements, right? It's those structural portions. So how do we communicate that in the standard if that's truly what we're looking for? If paragraphs 1 through 3, as Ms. Moore said, are truly, you know, the exposition in that part of the text, then how can we communicate in that standard that that is actually what is to be taught at this level?
It also can be something that, you know, and I don't want to, I'm certainly not influencing which direction you go in terms of what to include in the standard, but and I agree that this is also just a really tough standard to break down. But it's obviously critical, you know, with just like students understanding structure and like why a text is structured the way it is and how that influences meaning and the purpose of the text and so forth. And so we really have included a lot of information in the standard guide to kind of scaffold for teachers in understanding the standard. So we do try to include as much as possible in the standard guide, but if you feel like, certainly, obviously, if you feel like it would be helpful to have it in the standard as well, you know, that's great. I just wanted to say, like, we do break down kind of specifically, here's the best practice with this standard at this grade level in terms of understanding terminology or what practices a student should do and that sort of thing. So
it sounds like from the testimony of the practitioners that there's still confusion out there. So maybe adding more into the standard is going to eliminate that confusion.
I think
Also, if you go back to the
go ahead.
standard where we kind of changed I don't know if you changed it actually, but the objective summary and the theme all in one. I think maybe if you didn't include theme, I can't persuade you to do anything, but maybe it would be easier as a teacher if I only knew I had to teach like why paragraphs 1 through 3 help develop for the plot, not the theme also. I mean, that's just a lot of, they barely can recognize the theme, and now you want me to go find a paragraph to ask.
I would like to add that we did increase the rigor for the writing standards for middle school. This could be adding some balance if we refine this portion.
If we did what, Catherine? I didn't understand.
If we refine this portion, what I hear folks saying is A, the language is not clear. B, there are a lot of tasks being asked. of them at once. So I know, Chair, that you are very concerned about rigor, but I would like to note that we did increase rigor for middle school writing. So is this where we kind of balance and maybe take something off the plate?
I think it might be worth revisiting. I think it may have been Miss Dockery, though we've had quite a lot of conversation, so I can't remember exactly who said what. The idea of the kind of compromise position of maybe changing the language to analyze how the placement of particular sentence, paragraph, or stanza fits into the overall structure and contributes to the development of plot, instead of theme or, and then introducing theme perhaps in the 7th grade level as a way of kind of creating a progression. We're still thinking about, and to me, it seems like when we're talking about how, how each particular paragraph or section of a text contributes to the broader plot structure, we're really talking about its contribution to the development of plot. I haven't really heard anybody throw out any theoretical questions about the contributions of a particular part to the theme at this level. So I think that might kind of give a little more of a focus. I think that's also kind of what Nicole was kind of gesturing at when she was talking about the idea of perhaps focusing on just plot rather than theme and plot.
I think that sounds like an excellent suggestion. Can you put that in writing so that we could see if we have consensus on the wording?
I believe it would be pretty simple. I would just remove theme or from the proposed standard. So I did that now. So what reads in I-103 would be that edit.
I also wanted, I guess, to bring up again, should we include more specific language, like plot structure in there, or is that implied with the revision?
We've used this term overall structure pretty consistently throughout the standard progression. I see where you're coming from with the idea of, well, I guess I say that. I think we've only used it in the 5th grade level now that I'm looking back. But in like the 5th grade RL standard, we say how chapters, scenes, or stanzas work together to provide the overall structure. And here we're saying how a particular sentence, paragraph, or chapter in this or section fits into the overall structure. So I think we have used this term. Now we could obviously go back to 5 and add plot before structure if we wanted to be a little more specific there. I'm really open to ideas here. I don't feel like I've got this one figured out.
Should we put it in a parking lot or just say?
I think we're too close to put it in parking.
All right. Then if anybody wants to change what Coach Hilliard put in there, let us know now or forever hold your peace. Okay, hearing no objection, we're going to accept what you've written. And if it happens that we need to come back to it later, we may come back to it, but it's not all done until we say it's all done. Let's move on.
Chair, can I ask for a 5-minute break? I think we've been on since 3:15, 3 o'clock, 3:30.
I would say let's take a 5-minute break. It's now 5 o'clock, so we'll go at actually I was planning on supper break at 5:30.
Oh, okay. I'll wait till then. That's fine.
All right.
So welcome to move
go
dinner break.
Let's hold it till 5:30. All right, next.
Then we'll forge onward to 6RI, which reads, analyze how a particular sentence, paragraph, chapter, or section fits into the overall structure of a text and contributes to the development of ideas, or of the ideas.
We have TDOE feedback about that one. It says, please consider changing wording to analyze how the placement of a particular sentence, paragraph, chapter, section fits into the overall structure and contributes to the development of ideas. Adding the phrase the placement of helps to clarify the difference between this standard and RL3. Adding the phrase and contributes to the development of ideas highlights the why piece. Students are analyzing the relationship of structure to the text's meaning.
That wording would seem to mimic what we've just done with the 6 RL standard as well. I can take that. I believe that was Banks. I think you just dropped that in the chat, I believe. Thank you for that. I really appreciate you doing that.
Of course. Yeah.
All
I
right.
also,
Go ahead.
I wanted to add, I guess I have a few thoughts. I think I find the RI version of the standard even more difficult and confusing. So there's several comments about like lack of specificity from the stakeholder feedbacks in the survey with this, and request for listing specific structures to focus on. Another mentioned adding chronological cause and effect, and just some general comments about vagueness. And we did take away the specific text structures from the writing standard, if I am incorrect. I think we talked about having initially in there, we talked about having like them utilizing text structures such as chronological, sequence, cause and effect, etc. So I'm wondering if this is maybe where we add it back in. And as a teacher, personally, I feel like at this level, that gives kids something to kind of grab hold of. So if they're identifying and analyzing these types of text structures, I feel like it makes it a little bit clearer to teach and maybe a little bit more developmentally appropriate. I think the vagueness is more appropriate in, not vague, but I guess being more open-ended is more appropriate in the 9 through 12 grades. And I'm wondering if other people have taught 6th grade, such as Miss Now, and or middle school, such as Miss Now and Miss Moore, have comments about that.
So me personally, I mean, I think this is me personally. I would love to know, like, compare and contrast, problem solution. I would love to know like text structure as far as that goes. This standard is actually the standard. Now, we did not make any changes to it. However, I'm liking your proposals you're making.
Annie, or sorry, Miss Dockery, feel free to boss me around. I think I found what you were looking for, but let me know if not. About the writing standard.
Now, did you have any comment?
I'm not opposed. I'm not opposed.
Okay, Annie, then can you draft something, or Coach, can you draft something that reflects the comments that Annie had?
I don't know if I have the understanding of exactly what she was suggesting to draft something.
I think I have something written down in my notes, if that helps. But again, this is just a proposal. I'm not married to it. I just think this one is a little bit confusing, and maybe them having understanding of types of text structure might scaffold 9 through 12 better. Okay, so what I had for 6th grade, of course, just something that's throwing out. Identify and analyze the structure an author uses to organize a text, e.g. sequence, cause, and effect, including how the placement of a particular sentence, paragraph, chapter, or section fits in structure and contributes to the development of ideas.
Could you possibly drop
Another
that in
note.
the chat?
Oh, yeah. Another note that I have, and this is, I did this a while ago, so it doesn't have our EG in it, but I wonder if anybody else feels this way, but I kind of feel like looking at particular, like we move from particular sentences, paragraph, or chapters to major sections in 8th grade. Major section just feels easier to analyze to me than analyzing the purpose of a particular like sentence. but that might just be me.
I have put Miss Dockery's language into the I-104 suggested change box. Hers is the second paragraph. The one above is the TDOE recommendation. I just have them both there so that we can look at both.
What are the two intellectual activities you're asking them to doing in identify and analyze? And how, if they analyze, they have to identify. Do we need identify?
I would prefer not to include identify just because elsewhere we're pretty consistently using the verb analyze from here on out in this progression. And we used just identify, or we just used analyzed in the 6.rl version of this standard. So for the sake of consistency, I would prefer to just stick to the analyze verb.
Would you be able to go along with that, Annie?
Yes, very much so. Very rough draft over here. So.
All right. So let's take off identify, and we'll
Okay.
go with analyze the structure an author uses to organize a text, sequence, cause, and effect, including how the placement of a particular sentence, paragraph, chapter, or section fits into the overall structure and contributes to the.
It reads development of ideas. I don't know if it's it's cut off, but
Okay. Is everybody okay with that? Hearing no objections, let's move forward. Excellent. Thank you, Annie.
okay. Just since we made a relatively we've adopted some of Miss Dockery's language for the 6 RI, we'll just need to be intentional as we move through the RIs to make sure we mimic the language she used there. I'm just flagging that for future. Okay, 7 RL reads, analyze how a particular sentence, paragraph, or stanza contributes to the development of the theme or plot. I think we probably have some TDOE feedback on this because I know we shifted the 6 RL.
You got any?
The feedback that was provided for the 6th grade standard, it was the same across the grade band. It's the same for 6, 7, and 8. So if you would like me to read that again, I can.
Okay. No, go ahead. Yeah, I think we've got it. Would the the only edit we made to the TDOE recommendation for the 6th grade was the removal of theme or at the end. Instead of saying contributes to development of theme or plot, we just said plot. Would we then need to introduce that language at the 7th grade level of theme? Do we feel like that would be developmentally appropriate to introduce that concept of contributing to the theme at this level?
I think so.
With that, to add additional rigor.
Okay, so the standard would read, analyze how the placement of a particular sentence, paragraph, or stanza fits into the overall structure and contributes to the development of theme or plot.
Okay, are we good with that? Hearing no objections, let's roll.
Okay, 7.RI reads, analyze the structure an author uses to organize a text, including how the major sections contribute to the whole and to the development of the ideas. Once again, this is something we'll probably want to marry whatever choices we make to the language from Ms. Dockery's suggestion that we used as the basis for our version of 6.RI.
Any comments?
Do we still want to use the EG that we used in 6 here as well, and just change the including, because now we're focusing on a different element? So I can try to draft something up to see what I think it might look like.
I think we can add, everybody says that they need more specificity in order to know what to teach. So if we need to add that to get something more specific, yes.
Okay, one sec. I think I'm putting it together in a way that would reflect both the EAT's recommendation and Ms. Dockery's language. Okay, so it's now in I-106. I think it would read something along the lines of analyze the structure an author uses to organize a text, e.g. sequence, cause, effect, including how the major sections fit into the overall structure and contribute to the development of ideas.
Everybody agree with that? Well said. Let's move on. Thank you.
We've
Okay.
lost, wait a minute, we've lost the whole in 7th that was in the EAT's recommendation.
I think that was meant to be captured by how the major sections fit into the overall structure. Though I see what you're saying. We could change the language from including how the major sections, we could just say including how the major sections contribute to the whole and to the development of ideas, just to mimic the EAT language.
I think
Maybe
I
a slight
prefer that.
departure. Okay. I can paste that over and see what we think. Okay, so now read analyze the structure an author uses to organize a text, e.g. sequence, cause, effect, including how the major sections contribute to the whole and to the development of ideas.
Does that work for everybody? I hear no objection, so let's move on. I'd say that's accepted.
Okay. The 8th grade RL reads, analyze how a particular sentence, paragraph, or stanza contributes to the development of the theme or tone. This reads identically to the 7th grade standard, except plot has been replaced with tone. Would we like to take our 7th grade standard and make a corresponding edit to this?
We have a
Okay.
TDO feedback on that. Let me make sure that we are. Yes. Okay. So I'm sorry, too many tabs. Okay. Yeah. It says, please consider changing tone to plot as students analyze tone in RL4.
Okay. So the TDOE recommendation is to simply use the 7th grade standard. So I guess it comes down to the TDOE is recommending that we use plot rather than tone, because we have previously addressed tone earlier in the progression.
I agree.
So do we want to just say theme or plot like we did in the 7th grade standard?
Okay with that, Catherine?
Yes, I gave it the thumbs up.
Okay, thank you. All right, let's roll.
Can I get one clarification from the group, just so it'll be helpful for me when creating the standards guides? For the way that the RL 5 is worded currently, when you say analyze how the placement of a particular sentence, paragraph, or stanza fits into the overall structure and contributes to the plot. In literature, I would consider the overall structure to be the plot. So it kind of in its current wording, it sounds like there's a bit of a distinction between the two. And if you are making one, it would be helpful for me to know what it is so I can explain it better, if that makes sense. Because I'm wondering, if the student is really analyzing how the placement of a sentence, paragraph, or stanza contributes to the development of plot, or fits into the overall plot and contributes to the development of the plot, if that makes sense. It's just kind of when you use both structure and plot in the RL, it gets a little, it seems like there's a distinction, and I just want to be able to grasp what that might be, if there is one, if you're making one. Does my flag make sense? I want to make sure.
No, I agree. And I've been
Okay.
sitting here pondering the progression from 6th through 8th myself. And because I feel like we're losing the impact on meaning.
Mm-hmm.
And if I understand we have two different things going on. And I really think that when we're saying in RL8, analyze how the placement of a particular sentence, paragraph, or stanza fits into the overall structure and contributes to the development of theme or plot. Really, are we really saying it fits into the overall structure and contributes to the meaning in some way? I'd like to hear other people's thoughts on that, but I'm not completely happy, to be honest, with the progression from 6th through 8th at the moment. I'm wondering what we're asking students to do.
Going back to, I just went back and looked at the like the TCAP pool, and I know it's not about tests, but I'm telling you how it's worded. Every one for the standard, the only thing it says is the overall structure. That is the only way it is worded. So I don't really know what that means, but that's what it means, or that's what it says. That's the only way it's worded.
I agree that overall structure typically means the plot if we are referring to fiction. Is this exclusively to fiction?
The feedback is yes for the RL standards. I don't have any feedback on the RI standards.
My question is the standard exclusively applied to fiction? This standard does not apply to nonfiction.
That's right. The reading literature standards, yes, strictly fiction.
Well, then I agree with your comment that overall structure is plot or fiction.
Would it improve the standards if instead of these standards reading fits into the overall structure and contributes to the development of plot, it read just simply fits into the overall plot structure and then ended there for some clarification, or does that not actually provide the clarification we're looking for?
I do think the meaning part that Ms. Now was indicating is missing. It's in the cornerstone, and kind of when we get up into grades 6 through 12, it needs to be getting closer to what the cornerstone is capturing. So I think you're right in kind of simplifying it there, but I do think the meaning piece at the end would help bring it closer to what the cornerstone is guiding students to do, if that makes sense.
Maybe fits into the overall plot structure and contributes to the meaning, or contributes to meaning, to kind of mimic what is being said.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So something I just would like clarification on. How are we distinguishing the difference between meaning and theme? I feel like those are kind of basically the same in my head. So I just would like to hear clarification on that, because I don't know if I'm completely following.
I'm using it interchangeably in my feedback. So yeah.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I agree. I hesitate to say anything because sometimes I don't know if like this is teacher specific language, but yeah, in the real world, I feel like meaning and theme are the same, and I would opt for consistency and opt for academic vocabulary for middle school. Then I think we should be just saying theme.
I do have fears
agree.
that if we eliminate theme, then maybe students stop hearing that language of theme. But I would say I use meaning all the time. Because like my 9 honors, we do a lot of AP prompts, and so they see that interchangeably. But I kind of worry at this level if that might be a detriment to delete the theme language. But I'd like to hear other thoughts about that.
I agree with you, Annie. I'd be worried about that. If we want them to use that to describe the meaning and use the word theme, then we got to keep it in there.
Then we do kind of seem to be circling back to language pretty similar to the language we already have. I think if we're going to stick with the language of theme rather than meaning, then that kind of settles that. But we still had this conversation about whether contributes to the development of plot says the same thing as fits into the overall structure, which seems to be a slightly adjacent but different conversation.
I think I like your suggestion about fits into the overall plot structure and contributes to the development of theme, which maybe doesn't eliminate our initial concerns about especially the 6th grade level, but it would use vocabulary that is more aligned with what we are expecting students to know, especially when we consider the other standards.
And
So,
And I also
Go ahead.
agree. I was sitting here looking at the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade standards at my school, and I do agree with keeping the word theme within the standard.
Thank you, Rosemary.
I like Mr. Hilliard's suggestion of having plot structure in there, because to me, like as a teacher reading that, I feel like that is more clear of what I'm asking students to do. And so I'm wondering, like, if we're looking at 6th grade, I mean, I feel like advances the plot still works there personally. Because I would say plot structure is a way that plot is advanced. So I think it still works. I guess, but I'm open to being persuaded or proven wrong on that point as well.
Where is this where is this language about advancing? I think I may be missing it.
Oh, my bad. That is in my notes when I was rewriting things. But I guess contributes to the plot. I think that still works. Contributes. Yeah, I guess same point I was making, just with contributes instead of advances.
Okay. I think there was some concern, I think, from Banks that fits into the overall plot structure and contributes to the development of plot is just kind of saying the same thing twice.
Yes.
So if we, yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry, in the 5th grade standard, moving back, I mean, we did say that it's contributing to the overall meaning of the text. And so if we're going to progress in rigor sufficiently and effectively from 5th grade to the 6th grade, then we don't want to lose that meaning. And so again, I think it's appropriate to add theme back in. I understand the concerns about the difficulty at that level, but if we don't, then again it feels like a regression essentially into the 5th grade standard if we do not include that.
I agree.
So I think incorporating all of the comments that have been made, I think what I have in I-103 for the 6th grade RL standard, I think encapsulates a lot of those ideas and analyze how the placement of a particular sentence, paragraph, or stanza fits into the overall plot structure and contributes to the development of theme. How do we feel about that?
I think that's good. I was going to say also, this go in the 2nd reading standard, they in 6th grade, well, in all of them, but in 6th grade, that's with the central idea, but it also says determine central idea or themes of a text and analyze their development. So this is kind of building off that second one. And so they're doing that in 6th grade, determining the theme and analyzing their development. So to me, this kind of goes along with that. So if they're doing it already in the 6th grade, I don't know really about like taking it away. I don't know. We're talking.
Are you, Brittany, are you proposing a further change to what Coach Hilliard has put down there?
No, I think that's good. I'm just saying this is a lot. It's very similar to one that we have already done for the 2nd reading standard. So I was saying that these two more, I guess this is just a deeper dive into it, but they're already determining the theme and analyzing its development. So I was saying,
going along with what he said.
Okay, that's good. So it looks like we have consensus. Now, is there anybody else that wants to make any other changes to what our Vice Chair Hilliard has put in that cell? Hearing none, I say we have consensus and let's move on. Now, where would we take, what would be our next step? Vice?
I made corresponding edits to 7th and 8th grade to mimic what we've done to 5 and 6.
So are we
So
headed
you can see
to
those in.
the high school next?
We still have 8 RI, but we are nearly
Let's
done.
do 8 RI and then go to supper.
Okay. So 8 RI will probably be very similar to what 7 RI reads. It currently reads, analyze in detail the structure of a specific paragraph or section in the text, and including the role of particular sentences in developing and refining a key concept. We have, well, actually, this is worded somewhat differently from what we've done with the 7th grade standard. So I guess we just need to look at this on its own terms. So analyze in detail the structure of a specific paragraph or section in a text, including the role of particular sentences in developing and refining a key concept. Does anyone have thoughts on that particular wording of the standard?
Anything from the Department of Education?
Yes. Said, please consider changing the wording of the standard at this grade level to be the same as grade 7. Analyze the structure and author uses to organize the text, including how the major sections contribute to the whole and to the development of the ideas. This wording more clearly captures adequate rigor and avoids students only analyzing the structure of paragraphs and sections in texts. It also better clarifies the difference between R3 and R5.
So do we want to simply just adopt the language we use for RI or 7.RI for 8.RI?
That'd be my suggestion.
One thing we lose is the and refinement piece. I'm not against taking it out. I'd have to say, and the refinement piece is a little challenging for 8th graders. And I also
That to me, sorry, I didn't mean to.
Oh, I was just gonna say, yeah, so they look at refining in 9-10. And then I think TDOE asked in their revision, this has included it, but I also don't like the in detail personally. I like for in detail to be removed.
How does anybody else feel about Annie's proposed changes?
I like adding back in the refining, and if we're refining, then it should be in detail. So it seems a little redundant to say it's in detail.
Does that
We did. So would it simply be then the language would read, analyze the structure an author uses to organize a text, e.g. sequence, cause and effect, including how the major sections contribute to the whole and to the development and refinement of ideas? Would that be where we add refinement? That seems to mirror what the EAT did.
I'm on a totally other word. Sequence, do we just mean chronological?
I believe so. That was Miss Dockery's language. So Miss Dockery, if you wanted to jump in.
Sequence, I find I guess a distinction between sequence and chronological. I could be wrong, but sequence is I think almost like in like a how to, like first you do this, second you do this, third you do that.
Are we still
I can
only
look
in
up
nonfiction? Are we still only in fiction?
This is nonfiction.
Nonfiction.
We're in nonfiction. Okay, well, I got you. Yep.
Does that satisfy your question, Catherine?
Yes, if we are in nonfiction, yes, genre does
Good.
matter. Yeah.
Ms. Dockery, what was your other question? Oh, chronological. So we do not have sequence that I can tell from short review of the current glossary. And you said, I do believe chronological order's in here, maybe? Well, maybe not. syntax. It seems to be highly referenced in other ones. Sorry, I'm sure I'm giving y'all whiplash.
I think would sequential be right if you're referencing chronological? Typically, it seems like chronological is the traditional term for kind of that informational text organization, at least in my experience, but I'm not sure.
Yeah,
I
I guess I'm
think,
thinking like a scientific process, like that would be in sequential order, but not necessarily chronological. Sorry, Dr. Stein, go ahead.
yeah, I think we're meaning two different things. But I think sequential, I mean, I know sequential and sequence are essentially the same, but to me, sequential is clear.
Okay. So do we want to change the language from sequence to sequential?
I'm good with that.
I'm good,
I'd
I'm good
say
with that.
yes.
Okay.
All right, now look at the cell that our Vice Chair Hilliard has created and see if there's any more comments you want to make about that, about changes.
I did not add that language about refinement, so I can add that as well.
Well, why don't you do that and then we'll take another peek at it.
Okay, just did.
Okay, thank you. All right, does that look acceptable to everybody in its current state? Well, hearing no objections, I'd say we're done with that level. And we're going to go on to the high school here. It's now 5:33, and I would like to call for a 20-minute supper break. I don't want you to get indigestion. If you want to start and simply bring your dessert to the table and turn your camera off, I leave it on. I don't care. We'll watch you enjoy it. And we'll get back here at 5:53 or earlier if everybody's ready. But take at least 20 minutes. You deserve it. We've been working hard, and we'll try to plow through and get as many of this as done as we can.
Y'all are cooking. We're on 108 out of what, 135?
Okay, beautiful.
Yes, and just remember, friends, we are live, so I'm going to turn my camera off and my audio off in the event we have any friends joining us. But
Yes.
feel free to call or text me on my cell phone if you need anything during the break.
I will clarify really quickly. We're on 108 of 211, not 135. So we are still we're a little over half done with the reading.
Oh, was it 135 that we had? That's how many standards we had left to do today. I'm
Right.
so sorry. That was cruel and unusual punishment. I'm still very proud. Michael drove
Not a
us
problem.
to
We are still
We're
moving.
cooking.
We'll keep it up. Now let's go have something to eat.
Okay.
Okay, huh? Are you enjoying the conversation? You know, Vanderbilt football's getting actually fun to watch these days.
I'm having a blast with it.
They are
bet
really
Big
good.
football fan. I'm a big football fan and an alma mater, so this is a rare circumstance where I get to root for our team.
I know.
I sat through a
Smart
lot of
football.
games at that stadium when I was in undergrad that were not particularly close. So
No.
this has been nice.
Let's see. Who else is out there besides you and I? Shout out
It's
to them.
Catherine's out here checking in for the undefeated Memphis Tigers.
Oh my, yes,
What a win.
congratulations.
Yeah, what a win. Huge.
Man.
The longest win streak in the country. Memphis
Yeah.
Tigers. No
Yeah.
team has won more games in a row in all of college football.
We're very proud of our Tigers here in Memphis.
Absolutely.
And rightfully
As
so.
it should be.
Oh, there's Miss Summers.
I'm late for class.
Okay, so I see you got us. Oh, there we are. Do you have E1 and 2 up there?
Let's see.
I think we're scrolled a little further down. We're on row 109.
Okay. Can you roll us back?
Yes, I think we're good. Do we have a quorum?
Not yet.
6, 7.
We're only doing logistics now. No deliberations.
Yeah. Oh no, we're good. We have a quorum. But yeah, you feel free to call in the meeting whenever you'd like to officially have a start. Oh, I have it paused, so that's why. Hold on. How about now? Can you see 109, 108, 109?
Yes. Thank
Okay.
you.
That was on me. I had it paused while we were done.
Have some apple
Any-
pie.
Who's calling in?
I know. I said have some apple pie.
Oh my gosh. Okay, Rosemary, I was gonna have some strawberry shortcake.
My sister made the apple pie. Some over at her house. Not that it was actually like 2 minutes from my school, so I'd have to drive all the way to Germantown.
Oh yeah. Well, I was afraid of getting it on my computer.
Chair, if you could look at the chat before we start. Tonight's our first night of rehearsal, and I didn't want to miss it because we have an October concert here in Memphis. I do stay with the Memphis Symphony Chorus. This is my 27th year.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah, no, that you got to have that for your soul. You have to have that extra. That's what I
Yeah.
do. Why I do what I do.
Yes.
Okay, so
Now
we
I'll
got
take
Rosemary.
a moment
We
of
got Catherine.
celebration. Chair, if I may, I mentioned, I think, in one of our earlier meetings that my grandmother was an English teacher for 40 years. Well, she celebrated her 97th birthday yesterday. And
Wow.
there is a picture for you guys.
Oh,
Yep.
how wonderful. And you got to be with her.
Oh, yeah, wouldn't miss it for the world.
Awesome. Annie, are you out there? No.
I am.
Oh, you are. Okay. All right. So it looks like we have a quorum with Annie. And let's see. Dr. Now, are you there? Not
Yes, I
yet.
am.
Okay. I think we have a quorum, so I'm going to call this meeting back into order now at 5:59. And Ms. Summers, did you have something to report to us?
I don't believe so, but if you need something from me, call me.
Okay, we'll do that. You've been very helpful, along with all of the entire staff that you've got there. This has been so much easier to get this tremendous task done with all your background help and all of the time that's went in to coming up with the recommendations that you've had really have made this job doable. All right, this labor of love shall continue now with which cell?
We are on row 109. So we're
Okay.
looking at the standard in G109, continuing the same progression we've been on, wrapping it up here pretty soon after a few more standards. We're on E1, E2, RL, CS5, which reads, analyze how an author's choices concerning text structure, plot structure, and or time manipulation contribute to its overall structure, meaning, and aesthetic impact. Do we
Are
have
there
any TDOE
any
field? Yeah, do we have TDOE feedback there? Whoever's looking at 912.
We do not.
Okay. Do we have any
Elsewhere, we've tried to avoid and or. Do we feel like this is an instance where and or should be used, or should we shorten it to just and or just or?
I think and/or might be appropriate here.
That's kind of what I was thinking too, but I just wanted to see if anyone else disagreed.
I'm good with it.
I do have a question I'm just curious about. We initially had the original, hold on, sorry. Too many tabs again. The original was analyze how an author's choices concerning text structure, plot structure, and or time manipulation create effects such as mystery, tension, or surprise. I'm just wondering about why we're eliminating it and if it's a good elimination or not.
Well, that's it. That says a lot of other things than what this says.
I think those things are encompassed in the aesthetic impact.
Hey, can you hear me? This is Tammy.
Yes, we can.
Okay, we went aesthetic impact because we were trying to encompass everything. We didn't want to just limit it to mystery or suspense or tension. We were trying not to limit.
Tammy, I lost the last little bit. That might have just been me.
Oh, we were trying not to limit. Yeah, I'm in the middle of nowhere in a gym with a storm.
Be safe. Feel free to use the chat.
Hmm.
Right. I think if I'm hearing correctly, she's saying that the aesthetic impact essentially encompasses the original language in the standard. I will also say, at least in my building, this has always been a standard of some degree of confusion. And we've also often, I've heard the complaint that the previous wording was a little too specific at times. Like it didn't apply to so many texts. And so it kind of didn't feel encompassing enough to encompass all literary texts. Now that's just colloquial in my colloquial experience. That's what I've heard.
Okay,
I think
Banks, can the standards guide refer us back to the original wording in explaining aesthetic impact?
Yes, absolutely. We can break that down and kind of describe the different ways that can look in a given text. And we have also received that feedback that Lucas was talking about in terms of it being too limiting with those current terms in there. So aesthetic impact, according to the feedback we received, would be more all-encompassing.
Okay.
And we could break that down specifically as to what that looks like, though, in the standards guide. Yes.
Annie, does that satisfy your question?
Yeah, I just think if the standards guide is going to like specify that teachers should be teaching like the mystery, tension, and surprise aspect, then I'm not sure if we should take it. I don't know. I guess I just need to, I want to make sure that that the standards guide reflects the change, because this would have a pretty major impact on the way this standard is taught. Like both schools I've taught in with 9th grade, we always have like a suspense unit because of the standard, which I have always actually felt kind of limited by it. So I'm not opposed to it, but I just think it's one we need to think about as far as making sure that everything's aligned between the standards guide and the actual standard, so that teachers don't eliminate their suspense unit. And then on the standardized test, what do you know, we've got like specific questions about suspense tactics.
We could also, and I don't know if this is something I even necessarily want to do, but we could just simply include an EG list after aesthetic impact with mystery, tension, surprise.
Could we
As a
also
way
put
of
it
kind
in the
of marrying
glossary?
those two. I definitely think we should.
Yeah, in the
my mind.
glossary too. I'm not opposed to what you just said, Lucas. If we think that will help teachers to understand and help us at testing time.
I can put that together really fast.
Dr.
just-
Al?
I just want to clarify that I'm not against taking it out. I guess I was saying that if we're taking it out, that needs to be reflected in the standards guide, that they're not just looking at mystery, tension, and surprise anymore.
Yeah, we have received assurances of that
Okay.
from the department.
Okay.
Okay. But Lucas, I think an EG would be good here.
I went ahead and drafted one. It's in cell I-109.
Yeah, because it doesn't give you that limiting factor that people have been concerned about before, but it just gives you some examples. What say you, Dr. Now? You got your microphone on?
No, that's fine. I think the original language said effects such as mystery, tension, or surprise. We're essentially doing the same thing. So that's fine if we want to include that.
That's one thing I'm wondering, is if we include an EG that has the exact same language, do teachers just read it as the standard has not changed?
I think they likely would.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if like maybe include something a little bit different in the aesthetic impact, or eliminate the EG. I don't know. I just feel like if I read that, not being part of this conversation, be like, oh, they just decided to put this in a parentheses, but I'm teaching the exact same thing as I was before.
Yes, I'm struggling to follow the criticism for too much clarity or it's too much specificity, because I feel like every other kind of revision we've made has been to add specificity. And so what were the other things that teachers wanted to teach or felt like they couldn't talk about because those three elements, suspense and mystery, surprise, whatever, were listed?
I think, like, from my perspective as someone who's taught 9 and 10, it makes you feel like you have to have a mystery or suspense unit. Whereas if you eliminated that language, it would kind of make it broader, like the rest of the standards, where it's basically structure for any literature. Does that answer your question?
It does, but I think this term aesthetic elements, was that the term? I think it's kind of vague. Vague in a way that seems less helpful. And so I'm wondering if that's just not the right term. It also doesn't seem like common education vernacular. Push back again if I'm wrong, but just from my 6 years in the classroom, I don't think I ever used that phrase.
I don't disagree with you. I think effects, the overall structure, meaning, and effects. I mean, the effect of surprise, the effect of mystery, the effect of tension in the narrative, you know. I think that's more what we're talking about. Maybe literary effects. I don't know if that is better at all. I think if since we've streamlined language in the rest of the standards, and so that, you know, if we're reading the rest of the standards, you know, e.g. indicates an example and that these are just examples, then it shouldn't be taken as limiting, because we're not intending that elsewhere.
I agree with that.
So I agree, aesthetic impact seems odd there. But other than literary effects, I don't know. Does anybody have any other suggestions?
I liked the language of just effects. I
That's-
think that's essentially what we're describing.
I think I like effects as well. I'm not, when I hear literary effects, I'm not totally sure what that means. Yeah, but I think maybe one thing, just I guess as a 9 teacher, if maybe we mix up some of those EGs to not be just mystery, tension, surprise, to give us some other examples, to kind of broaden what we're teaching and understanding of what we're teaching. I'm not sure what those examples would be, but I'm just afraid that if teachers want it to be broader and we just give the same examples, it's going to be interpreted and probably tested the exact same way as it was before.
So I'm working through this, and what I think they were trying to get at with aesthetic impact, and then also reading with context, mystery, tension, and surprise. Is it emotional impact? Like how an author's choices evoke emotion in a reader. Is that the goal of this standard?
I hesitate to limit it to emotion, but I see where you're going with that. What about an effect upon the audience? Or effect upon the reader?
That's where my head was going personally.
Sorry, I've been teaching AP Lang today. Effect upon the audience. We've been talking about that, but effect upon the reader, I could see that.
Would somebody like to draft?
I just did.
Okay. Can we?
It's an I there. This is an easier conversation, and I don't want to deviate from what we're doing right now, but I do think it's one we need to have relatively soon for the standard. I don't love analyze how an author's choices concerning plot structure as one of the elements in that list contribute to its overall structure, since we've defined overall structure as plot structure. So we're essentially saying analyze how author's choices regarding plot structure contribute to plot structure. So I think we could probably do with just saying contributes to its meaning and effect on the reader, and just eliminate that reference to overall structure.
Oh, amen. I like that.
Yeah, I second that emotion.
Okay, so with that edit made, the standard now reads: analyze how an author's choices concerning text structure, plot structure, and/or time manipulation contributes to its meaning and effect on the reader, e.g., mystery, tension, and surprise. Obviously, that does not mediate Ms. Dockery's concern that people are going to read this still as just being the mystery, tension, and surprise standard, which it always has functionally been.
But we'll address that in the standards guide. They'll talk about that. It's
Do
not
we
meant to
even
be
need?
limited.
Do we need the EG list then? When we included the EG list because we thought aesthetic impact was confusing. I think effect on the reader is substantially less confusing.
My vote would be to delete the EG because I think everyone in my department would interpret it as the standard is the same.
And I agree on that as well. 'Cause I noticed that in a previous standard, at another grade level, we did eliminate the EG, but we didn't have the EG.
And Catherine and I were looking for more specificity, but I think, you know, you guys are going to be teaching that, and if you think it's going to have that negative effect, then I'd go along with you. Just take it out.
I think ultimately our choice is, because I agree with Ms. Dockery, that if we keep the mystery, tension, surprise, EG there, people are just going to read this as a continuation of the same standard that was there previously. I think our options are essentially get rid of the EG or replace, like she mentioned earlier, the elements within the EG with other effects that the text might have on the reader.
Then
But
this
also
can
could
be an
within the-
exhaustive list. So let's go with what you have. Any other comments? Are we good with what Co-Chair Hilliard has just created here?
May I suggest including in the wish list your specific request to unpack that element of the standard so that we can have that on
Yes.
record for the standards guides?
Yes, you have that request right now.
You read my mind, Banks. I think Miss Now has access to the wish list and we could add that. Although, did we settle the matter by taking out the EG or am I missing something?
Yes, we took out the EG. But we now need to have it addressed more specifically within the standards guide.
So, okay, I'm sorry. So we are currently talking about wanting that in the standards guide as opposed to defining it in the glossary, or both.
We can do both.
I think when it was aesthetic impact, it felt like more like a term. I feel like effect on the reader, it feels less like a glossary term.
Okay.
It's a little more generic.
Agreed. Just checking. Okay, thank you.
No, that's great.
But I do think it's worthwhile to unpack those various effects that can be had on a reader in the standards guide.
Then actually my question again, this is for both fiction and nonfiction, which is why we have plot structure and text structure.
This is for just fiction. This
So
is an RL standard.
So why do we have plot structure and text structure? How are we distinguishing between those two?
Good question.
They can be different, right? I mean, you can have a cause and effect structure within a piece of literature, but that's not how the plot is structured. I'm just thinking through this in my mind. Correct? I mean, is that how we interpret that?
Is
Or
that
do we feel
element
that's
be
necessary?
appropriate for 10 and 11 to be 9 and 10 to be making that kind of distinction?
Elsewhere, we've essentially treated structure and plot structure interchangeably. So, I mean, I would be content with changing it to analyze how an author's choices concerning plot structure and/or time manipulation contributes to its meaning and effect on the reader. But if we feel like the language of text structure is adding something, then I'm also content to keep it.
I think if like I'm good with either, but I think if we keep it, that is something that might need to be unpacked as well, because that's always confused me a bit too. What are we looking? What's the difference here? So,
I mean, and usually when we talk about text structure, we are talking about something that's informational. So I can see that it would be more appropriate in the informational standard.
So do we just want to eliminate that reference to text structure there?
I'm fine with that.
It seems like we have consensus there.
Okay.
And thank you, Catherine.
Okay, so it now reads, analyze how an author's choices concerning plot structure and/or time manipulation contribute to its meaning and effect on the reader.
All right. All in favor? Aye. Thumbs up.
Sorry, one thing. Do we have, okay, so do we have a noun that it's referring to there? A text?
You refer, like, are you
contribute
talking about the
to-
antecedent for its? there?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Okay.
To just the text's meaning and effect on reader. I think that rectifies it.
I'm good with that. Everybody else? Annie, you good with it?
Yes.
That's a good noun. All right, let's roll.
Okay.
Good job, everyone.
E1E2RI reads, analyze how an author's ideas or claims are developed and refined by the ordering or sequencing of text elements. First of all, do we have any TDOE feedback on that? No, we do not.
No, there's none for this cornerstone for 9 through 12.
Okay.
Okay.
So do we have any feedback?
Hearing none, I would assume this is acceptable. Let's move on.
Ms. Dockery, you seem to cringe a bit. Did you have something to say? You're muted.
Sorry. I want to double check. I like to do a quick comparison to make sure we're not losing anything.
Okay.
So again, I'm not, anytime I said I was not necessarily advocating for anything, but the original mentions refined by particular sentences, paragraphs, or larger portions. And this one is developed refined by the ordering or sequencing of text elements. Right, I hope I'm looking at the right standard here. Okay, good. So I don't know, for me, like, what do they necessarily mean by text elements specifically?
So we define that's a term that really kind of is a broader term that captures just the essential components of a story, or an informational text, whatever. So in a story, it would be, the setting, the character, the plot, the theme. Those are kind of the essential components of the story. And then in an informational text, it would be the people in the story, the events of the story, the development of the ideas in the story and so forth. So we actually define what text elements is. So I think that's why the EAT was moving in that direction of including that in the standard itself.
Would those text elements always be things that would be ordered and sequenced? Or it seems...
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
It does seem like that seems like a significant change though. So,
So the reason why they did ordering and sequencing is because it was to separate the standard from standard 3, which is also about text elements. But standard 3 is not about the ordering or sequencing, because the ordering or sequencing, of course, is the structure, right? And whether it's literary text or informational text, that's why they changed the language here, is to make it specifically about like how the author structures those elements throughout the text, as opposed to just how they develop, or the meaning behind a given element and so forth. There's certainly still overlap, but trying to distinguish it a little bit more than it has been is what they were attempting to do. So does that make sense, Annie? Okay, perfect.
So are we good with what we have written in that cell? Hearing no objection, we're ready to move on.
Quick note, if you did want to define it, it is not currently in the glossary. Too.
Okay.
It's not in the active current glossary.
Okay. Yeah, it likely should be added because I do think text elements that's not necessarily the definition Banks provided would be the one that I just intuitively would have produced. So I think that would be helpful.
So that's a parking lot item, and we would read.
I believe that's a wish list item, or I guess it's also kind of parking lot. Yeah, that's kind of us.
It's
No,
parking
that's
lot.
us.
We have all
Yeah,
glossary items in the parking lot. I added it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you want
I
the
see.
standards guides wish list, if you want it in the glossary, which is y'all.
Okay.
All right, one more term. Time manipulation. Do we mean pacing? Or are we all feel good with that term?
I think we mean like foreshadowing, flashback. I think
That's what I thought, but okay. All right.
Sounds good to me.
If it's not in the glossary, though, that might not be one. But I wouldn't hurt to include that.
Oh, yes, I agree. You got that, Banks? That could be that'd be a wish list thing too, about time manipulation.
I got it.
Time manipulation. Well, if it's glossary, then it would be that's us. That's parking garage.
Perfect.
So are we simply just going to maintain the language of the E1, E2 RI standard then?
I think so. I didn't hear any changes. Going once, going twice, going thrice. Okay. Accepted in its current state.
Okay. Then we have the E3, E4 RL, which reads, analyze how an author's choices concerning the structure of specific parts of a text contributes to its overall structure, meaning, and aesthetic impact. I think we probably, we didn't like the word aesthetic and impact, so I think we'll likely change that to effect on the reader again. Am I correct there?
Yes.
Okay. And so that's effect on the reader.
And there was no comments from TDOE. So are we good with that as changed?
I think we may, because we still have that analyze how an author's choices concerning the structure of specific parts of it. Well, I think that actually works, contributes to the overall structure, meaning, and effect on the reader. Yeah, I mean, I think that's all I have, unless anyone else has something to add.
I
I
did
like
want
it.
to
I think we're
flag.
closer to the cornerstone.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Keep it.
I did want to flag just that the informational version has and evaluate. I don't think I noticed this the first time, but the literary one does not. And it would be our feedback to include it in both since it's the same grade level. Just the phrase and evaluate.
So analyze and
that.
evaluate.
Well, it's analyze and evaluate the effectiveness of the structure an author uses. So would we analyze and evaluate the effectiveness of how an author choices concerning the structure of specific parts of a text contributes to an overall structure, meaning, and impact? It's not just simple evaluation, it's evaluating the effectiveness of a structure.
I'm thinking it through.
I feel like we train students more to evaluate the effectiveness of informational writing than we do literary writing. Now that's perhaps something we could criticize about how we teach those things.
I don't know. I think that's fair. Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Oh, are there any changes to this then?
So the E3, E4 RI reads, analyze and evaluate the effectiveness of the structure an author uses, including whether the structure makes points clear, convincing, or engaging. I would recommend we say and instead of or there. Clear, effect, convincing, and engaging.
Yes.
I don't think those are mutually exclusive.
Right. Any other things to include? Are we good with this?
I guess the only thing, so we had text elements in the 910. I'm just wondering about the thinking about not using text elements in the 11-12.
What would you
I think we're trying to make a
substitute?
more. I think this is attempting to ask students to make a more like holistic evaluation of the structure of a text, rather than looking at individual parts as much. Thinking more about like, was this the appropriate structure to employ in order to make an argument clear, convincing, and engaging? So I think that would make more sense to kind of zoom out and think more holistically.
I agree. Are we good as stated in the cell? Okay, I hear no objections. Let's move on.
Okay, we have a new standard, so we're on to number 6. We're halfway through the reading standards now.
Well, that's good to hear.
Technically more than halfway, because one of the standards only applies to one half of the.
And we have a whole hour left.
So much time. All right. New cornerstone is assess how perspective or purpose shapes the content and style of a text. So we're thinking about perspective or purpose and how they shape the content and style of a text. All right. So KRL CS6 reads, with prompting and support, identify who is telling the story at various points in a text.
There was no TDOE feedback.
Thank you.
We're good with this then?
Oh, I'm sorry. There was no Tennessee Department of Education feedback.
Okay, thank you. Ready? Go.
Sorry.
Are we going to keep this one?
Yes.
Quick note. Leanne had to go back to attend to her family matter, but I can text her with any questions y'all have about K5 for the rest of this session.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
All right, we accept this one as written? Yes? Hearing no objections, we do. Go ahead, move on.
That's our first keep of the day. With prompting and support, distinguish between information provided by photographs or other visuals and information provided by the words in a text.
Again, there was no Tennessee Department of Education feedback on that standard.
Is this adequate? Yes?
I have
Yes.
Okay, keep it.
Okay. The first grade RI standard reads, distinguish between information, or sorry, I skipped. First grade RL standard, identify who is telling the story at various points in a text.
So that's asking them to do it without prompting and support.
Yes. So we're removing prompting and support from the kindergarten standard.
Again, according to the TDOE, no feedback.
Any changes? Hearing none, let's keep it and move on.
The first grade RI standard does the exact same thing. It takes the kindergarten RI standard and removes prompting and support.
Any changes?
No feedback from the TDOE as well.
All right, hearing none, let's move on.
Okay, second grade RL standard reads, determine when characters have different perspective. I would say different perspectives, plural. Am I wrong there? That should probably be plural.
Perspectives with the S. You said with the S?
Yes, I believe so. I think it should be plural.
Any other changes in that?
No.
Okay, let's move on. Take it as revised.
Second grade RI reads, identify the main purpose of a text, including what an author wants to answer, explain, or describe.
According to the Department of Education, no feedback on that standard.
Any changes recommended?
Question, sorry, I'm lagging. My audio is lagging. Characters, we're just in fiction. We're not, because if not, we should say characters and figures, but are we just doing fiction?
RL is just fiction, so
Okay.
it would just be in fiction, yes.
Other than that, should we keep it done just the way it is? Hearing no,
Yes.
let's go on.
Okay. 3RL reads distinguish reader perspective from that of the narrator or the perspectives of the characters and identify the point of view of a text. I personally find this one a little confusing.
And according to the Department of Education, their feedback was, for clarity, please consider changing the wording to identify the point of view of a text and distinguish reader perspective from that of the narrator or the perspectives of the characters. This better captures the sequence in which students would approach the standard.
So they're really not testing for point of view here, then it's just perspective. It seems like they're using those words interchangeably when we distinguish that they're not.
Yes.
Dr. Stout, Tammy and Nicole might have more detailed thoughts, and Leanne, if we're able to get a hold of her. I know that they spent a lot of time talking about perspective and point of view and made a distinction. I believe it's reflected in the revised glossary in the prep work, but it does seem like this committee thus far has made some different decisions based on that.
I personally, in this progression, see no reference to point of view at any other point. And I think we have distinguished from between point of view as kind of a literary device and perspective as one's sort of stake on a particular issue.
Is it,
Go.
sorry, is it referring here to first person, second person, third person? So I mean, I think that that is an important thing for them to learn at some point. That's how I was reading it. This was identify what point of view it's written from, whether first,
I
second, or
thought
third.
so too until Rosemary read the TDOE language, which didn't have the phrase point of view in it at all, I don't believe.
Yeah, I put the proposed wording in the chat. It's in there.
Oh, is it? Okay, I just missed it.
Mhm.
I dropped it into I-19, the TDOE recommendation. It reads, identify the point of view of a text and distinguish reader perspective from that of the narrator or the perspectives of the characters.
So they just simply, as they said, moved the process to identifying the point of view first, and then the rest of it came to support that effort.
I'm
Yes.
once again gonna flag that if they want them to do both and distinguish the difference between the narrator viewpoint and the character's viewpoint, I think that's once again a big jump from second to third. I don't think we're scaffolding that jump well. So I don't know if we need to take something off of second or take something off of third or add something to the second, because that's a lot going on in that one standard that they haven't done in the others.
Any comments about that? It's the first time it's brought up.
I would be interested to hear from somebody who teaches elementary. I don't know the difficulty level of that, whether it's an easy jump or a difficult jump at that age.
I'm open to Miss Winter's thoughts. I think Brittany's at her game and stuff, and this is what happens. And yeah, I'm happy to flag this for Leanne. Dr. Stout, my recollection of one of the survey reports, if not both of them, is that there was a question about the second to third grade jump, like in multiple places. That was some of the feedback that the public gave. I'd have to go find exactly what page number it is. Annie, I'd be happy to flag this standard for Leanne and see if she has specific thoughts. Or these two standards, I should say.
So for the standard 2RL CS6, determine when characters have different perspective. So right there, it should be reworded. Determine when characters have different perspectives. What type of perspectives should be reworded right in there?
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good. Okay.
Sorry, don't keep going. Sorry.
Okay, so what I was stating was in the second grade standard, 2RL CS6, it states determine when characters have different perspective, whereas in third grade, the Tennessee Department of Education feedback for clarity, consider changing the wording to identify the point of view of a text. Now, second grade doesn't say point of view, or first, second, or third person point of view in the second grade. So how do they know about the different point of views when they were not introduced in the second grade? And it's a big jump from second to third without them even knowing the usage of first, second, and third person point of view.
Yeah, that's exactly my point. So you're jumping to point of view and you're jumping to distinguish between what the characters feel and what the author feels. And I think that's also a very sophisticated skill. I mean, I wrestle with that with high schoolers, I'll be quite honest.
So do we beef up the second grade?
I believe so. Where it says have different perspectives, then we would come up with some different wordings that will kind of look at point of view. They would definitely to know what first person point of view I mean, and then the second person point of view and third person they. The wordings for those point of views. In order to know
Yeah, I think the old
perspectives from that of the narrator. So they definitely need to know what a point of view is in second grade.
Yeah, I think the ultimate question we have to decide is, do we want to beef up second? Because I do think there's a big jump from second to third. Do we want to beef up second to smooth that transition, or do we feel, because if we feel like it's too developmentally inappropriate for third graders to be doing all the stuff in the third grade standard, by beefing up second grade, we're not changing the expectation for third grade. We're just hopefully making a smoother ramp onto that. Or do we feel like some of these expectations for third grade are better served happening at a later grade? I guess that's the question that we ultimately have to decide on.
And we didn't receive any of that particular feedback from DOE. So it sounds like they felt like this was an appropriate standard for that grade level. So I would lobby to at least put identification of point of view in the second grade without getting it too muddy.
And I agree with that as well, Chair.
Would it, the new second? Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, Vice Chair Hilliard. I'm actively texting Leanne, and she did encourage folks to look at grade 1, 2, to see 1, 2, 3, and make sure you feel good about that progression. In her
Yes, I
opinion,
feel
you're
like
welcome
the
to
overall-
agree with her. Oh, go ahead, Dr. Stout.
I'm sorry. My audio is lagging just a little bit, so I apologize if I cut you off. I guess the overall trend I'm seeing is this jump from second to third is really hard. And then this like pile on in middle school is really hard. And then we go to 9, 10, and 11, 12, and we like keep it the same. So I'm really worried about our third grade babies and our middle school babies, just if I take a 50,000 feet view.
Thank you, Dr. Stout. Okay, so I did get Leanne's final answer, which you're welcome to implement or disregard, just as all of our advisors' thoughts. She said that in first grade, it does get at point of view, I believe, and I'm not a ELA expert, so please correct me. First, I think it's 1 RLCS6, getting at point of view, and then she feels that it builds from 1 to 2 to 3, but totally at the discretion of the committee.
But in first grade, it says identify who's telling the story at various points in a text. So are they saying points is talking about point of view, but it says various points in a text.
That might be an error. I'm happy to ask a question, Ms. Winters.
Okay.
I can tell you, this is Nicole again. I can tell you that throughout third grade on, we really wanted to change point of view to perspective. And that's because there is a lot of confusion with, if you're like, what's the point of the view of the author? What's the point of view of the text? My kids automatically go, oh, it's first person. That's not what I'm asking you. But since the term point of view can be used in different ways, we were really trying to use the same language throughout. I understand that they do need to know first person, second person, third person. They need to understand that. But is what she's saying, they're teaching that already in first and second grade. We're just not really wording it that way. And then we could gradually move to perspective. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yes,
Thanks,
it,
Nicole.
it does make sense. Thank you so much for clarifying.
Okay, one more response from Leanne. They could put determined perspective of narrator or character. Does that help at all? I'm not exactly sure which standard she's referencing. I assume second grade.
I don't really feel like that is the point of confusion there.
That's
I
fair.
just know that was a big discussion. When you know, in sixth graders, and I know it's not about sixth grade, but we're trying to show the progression throughout. And this was, I'm looking at our notes, even through kindergarten, first, second, third, and we really just wanted to show the difference between the two. So.
I want to hold the line on the distinction between point of view and perspective. I know that people sometimes use them interchangeably. However, I think most precisely, they're not interchangeable. I also think there are ramifications for the lack of clarity. And so I think we as a committee can make the decision that we are going to distinguish between these two terms to provide more clarity in instruction and expectations.
That certainly should be talked about in the standards guide, I think. Now, how does what you just said affect what's going to go into the second and third grade standards?
I guess I'm confused about what they want them to know. Do they want them to know point of view, which is first, second, third person, or do they want them to know the perspective, which is how the character or reader feels about the action?
In third grade, it seems to me they want them to know both. And I mean, I would say that at some point they do need to know both. So I think in third grade, they're wanting them to be able to look at perspective and point of view using those terms as separate terms from each other.
So my whole suggestion would be to keep the second grade standard and then add point of view, but remove this language about distinguish the reader's perspective from that or of the narrator or the perspectives of the character. To me, that seems a pretty sophisticated kind of move that you're asking third graders to make. So if you want them to identify the main purpose of a text, am I reading the correct second grade? I know they jump around. Determine when characters have different perspectives. That's the second grade equivalent. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say determine when characters have different perspectives and the point of view of the text. That's the standard for third grade. That builds, that adds complexity. The rest of this language about distinguish the reader perspective from that of the narrator or the characters, I would move that to fourth or fifth.
So just looking at, I guess, progression here, our third grade RI is also looking at distinguishing reader from the author. And I feel like that's something that's important for them to learn somewhere. then they'll be able to understand that my point of view is different from a character or an author. But I'm wondering if we get rid of narrator, because I mean, that's also, I feel like the narrator versus characters is a little bit difficult. I would agree with that. So I'm wondering if we just get rid of narrator and be able to distinguish the reader perspective from the perspectives of the characters. And then author and RI.CS.6 is a little bit more, I don't know, concrete. I feel like narrator is a little confusing. How you got narrator perspective and character's perspective. So I do agree that that's a little confusing.
So what do
Okay.
we want third graders to learn? The various perspectives or point of view? Or are we saying we really want them to learn both the various perspectives and identifying point of view?
It seems to me, and I just want to, I'm kind of trying to understand because I mean, obviously I wasn't part of this conversation, but it seems to me like this is really the perspective standard. Like if you look at this progression, it's really focused on perspective. I think they're trying to make like a glancing reference to point of view to kind of differentiate between perspective and point of view, and then focusing in almost entirely on perspective from there on out. I think that's the intended purpose here. Now, I think that that muddles things a bit for me because it seems like it's becoming the point of view and perspective standard. But then when you progress, it's really just the perspective standard.
Well, and to add on to that, the TDO feedback looking ahead for the 6th grade standard, it says, please consider changing the word perspective to point of view since the standard only concerns narration. So
I do have.
Well, I guess that, I
concern.
mean, go ahead. No.
Annie, you have the
Sorry.
floor.
So this is a really good conversation to be having. I just
It
want to
is,
say
it
that
is.
because obviously there is confusion.
Right. Now, Annie has the floor.
I guess I would be concerned at completely eliminating the language of point of view, to where students are not learning point of view at all, because I do think it is important. And like when in my high school classroom, we talk about the impact, and this isn't a standard, but I think it's something that's important to talk about with students is what is the impact of point of view on the reader when it's told from first versus second versus third. So I think that eliminating point of view completely is going to kind of lessen students' understanding of text overall, and we're going to have a gap that's we're probably going to see ripple effects for.
I agree, Annie. Now, let me just remind everybody that our kiddos have been learning this stuff at these grade levels now since these standards were initiated. So it's not like we're popping something new on them. All we're trying to do is identify clarity and establish the ultimate sequence for learning, that these concepts can be introduced to them, but they're already studying this stuff. And nobody said, hey, our kids can't do this.
Yeah, there was actually a lot of feedback about the third grade standards in the public comments. I think that probably had the most feedback is the third grade standards. So I think there is some sense that the kids can't do it.
Okay,
I was looking back at the glossary definition in the old standards, and there is no glossary definition for perspective, but there is for point of view. And it says point of view is the position or perspective conveyed or represented by an author, narrator, speaker, or character, chiefly in literary texts. The narrative point of view can be labeled as in first or third person narration. And literary nonfiction, the point of view might also be the perspective.
Quick note, Miss Now, I do believe the committee worked on that. You're absolutely correct. In the original standards, I remember the conversation. If Tammy or Nicole can speak to it.
Yeah, I will.
But if you look at the revised standards, that supporting language in your prep work, I'll pull that up. Give me 1 second. But go ahead, Nicole.
No, I was just going to say that in the new glossary, we definitely defined the two. Like, because I don't think it's the same thing, but I feel like the glossary you just read is pretty much saying it's the same thing, and it's not the same thing. And so I think that's where the confusion is with the standard, because I know for me, I'm like, am I teaching perspective or am I teaching point of view? Because it says point of view, but then the questions and what I'm, the curriculum is giving me perspective stuff. So I'm a little confused. So I think there has to be a distinguish between the two. They are two different things. Correct?
I did just drop into the chat how we currently distinguish the two for the current standards. If y'all want to take a look there, it's really just kind of emphasizing that the point of view is the vantage point from which a story is told. So it goes back to that first person, second person, third person, etc. And that point of view is then used to convey perspective, which is a person's attitude toward or outlook on something as determined by their vantage point and experience. So, the problem is here is just like with a lot of other things in the ELA, we have a lot of overlap, obviously, with those two terms. But the part that probably does need to be protected is the part, I think Dr. Stout was alluding to this earlier, like when we're referencing narration, point of view is the proper literary term for that. And so, however that's represented in these lower grade levels, I think that's obviously for the committee to decide. But as far as like distinguishing between the two terms, hopefully that's helpful.
It is.
Okay, I located, I figured out how to find the chat while sharing screen, and I put this is in your SRC folder under prep work, under proposed standards, under supporting language. So for your ease, I copy and pasted your predecessor's working definitions of perspective and point of view, and I would, that theoretically should be the intent of how to read their proposed standard. Oh, did I do point of view twice? Oh, hold on 1 second. Sorry. Where's perspective? It doesn't look like edits to perspective, but maybe. Hold on. Okay, let's try that again. Perspective.
So my proposed suggestion, once again, is to go back to distinguish reader perspective from those of the characters. I think that's adding rigor for third grade, which is a very high stakes year. I would add point of view maybe to fourth grade, because then that's adding another level of complexity. So instead of adding 2 levels of complexity in third grade, I'm saying let's just add 1 additional level of complexity and scaffold the next level of complexity to fourth grade.
I can get on board with that.
I can too. I
Me
think
too.
we're getting close. So how would we word then the?
We would just simply remove identify the point of view of a text from the third grade standard and have it just read distinguish reader perspective from the perspectives of the characters. And then we could introduce identifying point of view in fourth grade, like Dr. Stout proposed.
All right. So can you make that change in the box and
Just
have everybody
did.
take a look at it? There it is right there, boys and girls. Is that acceptable to everybody as it's written? Yes. All right. Hearing no changes, we're ready to move on.
All right. We finally got there. 3RI, we've got distinguish reader's perspective from that of an author of a text. I would simply rephrase that to distinguish reader's perspective from the perspective of the author rather than from that of an author of a text. I think that's a little wordy. I think we can make that a little less wordy.
I agree. Any changes other than that? Hearing none, I think we're ready to move on.
So here is where I think we need to then add back. I moved on to fourth grade. So now I'm in fourth. All right. I would make a clear standard that says, or add to the standard that says distinguish between point of view and perspective, period. Describe how the narrator's or speaker's perspective influences how events are described. Describe how they are described. I think we need to make a clear note to teachers and to students that we're asking them to distinguish between what is a point of view and what is a perspective.
I think I'm fine with that, but I want to make sure that we include that bit about where they are also identifying the point of view of a text, because I think that's an important skill as well.
Yes. Oh, I can see that.
Should
But
the
I think
distinguishing
before we get, I see that, and you can put it here as well. But I do think we just need to have some language nudging them to clarify between the point of view and perspective.
Are you then suggesting a whole new standard?
I guess I'm making this standard kind of beefy. But I think it's appropriate because in the third grade series here, we've asked them now to make this, to have a sophisticated thought between what's my perspective and what's the author's perspective, or what's my perspective and what's the character's perspective. So this kind of continues that, but then adds point of view.
Would you add another sentence to 4RLCS6 or have a 4RLCS7?
Well, we can't add an entire new progression unless we want to do a lot of extra standard creation.
No, I like Dr. Stout's initial suggestion. Just the difference between the two, period. Next sentence.
Yeah, I kind of attempted to draft something similar to that. It's a little clunky, but I've thrown it into 121. It's a little bit of a lengthy standard now, and it's got several clauses, but it does have language about distinguishing.
I could buy into that. Dr. Stout, does that say what you intended?
Yes, it's the first part is great. I'm on describe how a narrator's or speaker's perspective influences how events are described. I guess I get that. Yeah. Basically, we're asking them to talk about bias. I mean, to be quite honest. So yeah, that's fine.
Quick
We're not
note.
talking about bias yet in fourth grade, right? We haven't introduced that term.
Brianna, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair Canese. Sorry to interrupt, Dr. Stout. Nicole, she's having technical difficulties, but she asked me to flag if you add, it sounds like point of view and perspective concurrently, it might impact the cornerstone. So you might need to make revisions there if the committee wants to move forward with this proposal.
But that's what they just have for third grade, so I don't understand that. I mean, third grade, they were using them interchangeably. So how does this now affect the cornerstone?
It's just changed from third grade to fourth grade.
The
That element.
cornerstone change?
No, I'm just saying the idea of point of view has changed from third grade to fourth grade.
I think the only reason it would, I think this is a decision we'll need to make. When they introduced point of view, they did it in third grade and then never mentioned it again. And this standard then became the perspective standard. So they essentially introduced point of view just to clarify that it is different from perspective, but we're really just focused on perspective, and we're going to continue with perspective from here. If we feel as though point of view is equally important, or at least very important, and therefore needs to progress alongside perspective, then I do think we need to go back and alter the cornerstone if we're making that change throughout fifth grade and sixth grade and seventh grade and eighth grade. If we're only making this one reference to point of view, like they did in the original iteration of this progression in third grade, then we likely would not need to change our cornerstone. So I think it's ultimately going to come down to what we're going to do with point of view going forward.
Just a reminder that TDOE did ask us to throw back point of view into sixth grade.
I mean, we could just simply change the cornerstone to assess how point of view, perspective, and purpose shape the content and style of a text. Just adding.
That's pretty simple. Why not? That gives it adequate attention.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, good. Okay. So I think, this is Nicole again, we would be okay with that. Through the discussion that we had, I think we would be okay with that. I just think there needs to be a clear distinction between perspective and point of view. I think right now the standard makes it as in it's one thing, and it is not one thing. So if you say point of view and perspective or something like that, and there's a clear distinction between the two, we'll be all right.
Yeah, and that's what is proposed right now.
Yeah.
All right, I'm good with that then.
So the new cornerstone I have is assess how point of view, perspective, and purpose shape the content and style of a text. Are we okay with that new cornerstone?
So my only thought about that is the cornerstone is supposed to be what we get to at the end. So that would mean 12th grade would need to say something about point of view. Am I correct in saying that?
I think what we're talking about right now is essentially once we introduce point of view is not going anywhere. Like it's going to be maintained. We'll need to make corresponding edits to most of the standards to integrate point of view to some extent.
Is that just because of the addition of distinguish between point of view and perspective? Or other reasons?
My understanding is that we felt as though point of view was important enough to continue, that it justified continued focus, but I don't necessarily feel that way. I mean, I'm willing to mention point of view and then move on and make this perspective standard. I think that's ultimately, it just comes down to whether we want this to be the perspective and point of view standard, or if we want this to just be the perspective standard with a glancing reference to point of view to distinguish it from perspective.
I think as the standard progresses, really it's largely a perspective standard. So point of view is necessary in these grades to understand the distinction between the two. But then as we progress, then it's really becoming how, perspective shapes the purpose of the text. So that's my interpretation of it. I'm fine with keeping it, as is the cornerstone, but
yeah, I think if we're going to mention point of view maybe once or twice and then focus in entirely, especially at the higher grades, on perspective, I don't think point of view needs to be added to the cornerstone, since the cornerstone should largely mirror what's happening in the higher grades.
Agreed.
I think that's my understanding of the cornerstone. Banks, you jump in. I think what your predecessors tried to focus on, if I'm characterizing Tammy's group's conversations well, Tammy, feel free to jump in. They wanted that 11th, 12th grade, or now English 3-4 standard to look as close to the cornerstone as possible, but they understood that there were lots of little Legos along the way that may or may not show up in the cornerstone or the 11, 12, now 3-4 standard. Banks, does that align, or am I off base?
Yes, no, that's right. And I think that I think you're all right in terms of when they get into the upper grades, it's very much about perspective, and it's really they would just need to reference. They would need to know the terminology of point of view when they're referencing narration in literature, right? So when they would say, well, this is written from a first person viewpoint and or first person point of view, and that shapes the viewpoint, that you're entering the story because of how it's told to you. And that's, so they would maybe a glancing reference is a good description, Lucas, in that sense, but it would certainly be an expectation that they still know that terminology in the upper grade levels, for sure.
And we're going to introduce it now at the 4th grade level.
Yeah, if they are still expected to know that terminology at the high school level, then we probably should reflect it in the cornerstone, is my kind of gut instinct then.
Okay, so who wants to keep it Who wants to change the cornerstone? Raise your hand. Am I the only one? There's two changes. Who does not want to change the cornerstone? Raise your hand. I see one hand raised there.
So we technically do not have a quorum in terms of decision making. So based on the attendance you have, Chair Kernigis, you would need 5 votes to make any voting based decision.
Okay. Well, then we're going to have to table this, I guess, until our next meeting.
You're still allowed to debate by consensus, but any vote would need 5.
I also think there's a possibility we also reach a clearer sense of this as we continue on this progression and see how much we're actually bringing up point of view.
I agree with that. Let's just get to the 12th grade and then come back and see.
Okay, let's move and put this in a parking lot.
Okay. So our 4th grade RL now reads distinguish between point of view and perspective, identify the point of view of a text, to describe how a narrator's or speaker's perspective influences how events are described. Are we good with that?
Describe how described.
We could say how events are depicted.
Yep, let's go with it.
I'll buy it.
Okay. Are we ready to move to 4RI?
Yep.
Okay.
Let's move on.
4RI reads, describe the differences in focus when comparing and contrasting 2 accounts of the same event or topic. Any TDO
Any recommendations from TDOE or TDOE watchers left?
Thanks is here.
Oh,
yes. Sorry, I
TDOE.
was on mute. Sorry. No feedback on that one.
Okay. Are we ready to keep it then? Yep. Hearing no changes, let's keep it.
Okay. 5.RL reads, compare and contrast the perspective from which different stories are narrated.
See, I actually think they mean point of view here.
Yeah, it does kind of read like point of view to me.
Now I'm thinking about the real story of the 3 little pigs? Have you all read that children's book? And it's the story is told from the perspective of the big bad wolf instead of the 3 little pigs. So when I read that, I think about like that example. But I don't know. Well, it says narrated.
Right.
So narration is point of view. So maybe I retract my statement. I don't know, what was their intention.
The feedback from TDOE was to change that to point of view because it is referencing narration.
I get an award for that I called that out. That's the only thing I did.
So go ahead and make that change and then we'll vote. We can vote. No, we're not going to need to vote. We're just consensus. We have consensus on making that change as recommended by TDOE. Changing it from perspective to point of view.
Are we content to make no reference to perspective in 5th grade?
I'm also wondering, what does that look like? Compare, contrast. That just seems like this one is told from 1st and this one is told from 3rd. Like, do we change narrated? I don't know if I'm just. Does anybody else understand what a deeper analysis besides identifying would look like?
I would add in its impact on the reader, because I think that's what it's trying to get at. Like, compare and contrast the point of view from which different stories are narrated and how that impacts the reader, or how those differences in narration impact the reader. I think that's what they're trying to say, like 1st person versus 3rd person versus 2nd person will have a different effect when you read it.
I see that, but I feel like that might be a little hard for a 5th grader, because when I talk about that with 9th grade, it's always a bit of a I don't know, it takes a minute for them to wrap their minds around how first versus second versus third impacts the reader. So I don't know if that'd be developmentally appropriate or not in the 5th grade if my 9th graders struggle with that.
I'm good with it as it is, as long
We
as
could
we
also,
change.
this has been, I mean, this will be the only standard that makes no reference to perspective if we choose to eliminate perspective entirely here, which I'm okay with, but it would be kind of breaking the progression a little bit. I wonder if this is the comparing and contrasting standard, maybe it's comparing and contrast the point of view from which different stories are narrated, as well. I don't know the exact phrasing it would be, but also comparing and contrasting the points of the perspectives of various characters. So kind of comparing and contrasting perspectives of characters, as well as comparing and contrasting points of views of different stories. That might be too much to take on in one standard, but there's a small part of me that's a little concerned about just completely abandoning reference to perspective in this level.
I understand where you're coming from, because we kind of introduced it in the 4th grade, and if we continue it in the 5th grade, they're going to be able to extend their distinction between the two.
Yeah, and we've been talking about perspective since 2nd grade. So they started in 2nd grade with perspective, and then 3rd grade, and then 4th grade. If we break from that in 5th grade, and then suddenly we are back to perspective in 6th, 7th, 8th, it's just this one little detour here in 5th grade where there's no reference to perspective.
So can we just pull over the language from 4th grade? So the first sentence is compare and contrast the point of view from which different accounts are narrated, period. And then describe how the narrator's or speaker's perspective influences how events are depicted. Can we just use that same?
Like that.
I'm wondering, like, looking at the .6, the RI standard for 5th grade is compare and contrast the perspectives and multiple accounts of the same event or topic. So I'm wondering if it is looking at an example like I gave in RL of the big bad wolf example, if that's what they were going for in that standard. So it said maybe compare and contrast the perspectives, because a narrator makes sense there as far as if you're talking about like Big Bad Wolf versus Three Little Pigs, but I don't know. I can't seem to. I feel like that's what they were going for. I could be wrong, but I feel like that's what they were going for, but I can't seem to figure out how to make it work without using the word narrator.
I'm going to go back with kind of I'm going to go with what you're saying, strictly because a lot of our prompts will say, change, you just read the story about how from a cat's perspective of being chased or chasing a mouse, now change it from the mouse's perspective, And so I think that is what they were getting at, because even in 6th grade, that's what I teach. Literally, I teach that story that you're telling. Like, we listen to Three Little Pigs, and then we listen to it from a different perspective. So I think that is what they were going for in this one.
Yeah. I'm happy to ask Leanne, and I wonder if it's in their spreadsheet of their rationality. It just depends on how many changes they made. I will also flag, we have no elementary folks on the call, so if you wanted to circle back, that would also.
I was looking at their spreadsheet, and it just says change point of view to perspective on all of them.
Okay, I appreciate you, Nicole.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll send the standard. It's 5 RICS 6. We want to know what their intent behind the standard is as written, or how it's applied. Ms. Dockery, would that capture your question?
Yeah, I think so. Maybe we steal the language from the RI standard somewhat, and maybe it makes sense just to exchange stories. Compare and contrast the perspectives in multiple accounts of the same story. I don't know.
It does seem just a bit narrow, though, because I mean we do have these few examples of pretty direct retellings of a narrative, but that is a pretty small niche.
Okay, so are we on RL right now?
I think we're kind of talking about both RL and RI a little bit, but I mean, we have not finished RL, so yes, we're still on
So
5.RL.
doesn't our eye solve our problem with RL? Like we were saying, like, do we put perspective and point of view in both in the standard? Like RL talks about point of view, especially with the guidance that they actually meant point of view. And then RI talks about perspective. They
Fine with
just,
that.
they just broke them up into two different standards, basically.
So one standard is going to be point of view, the other one is perspective.
I would like somebody's opinion. I'm just not seeing compare and contrast making sense for point of view. I don't. Can someone explain like what that would look like in a lesson, comparing and contrasting point of view, other than just saying that one's
can
first,
give-
that one's third?
I can speak toward that because we gave an example in the standard guide. You know, for example, like a first-person narrator who is a character within the story would likely have certain biases toward characters or events. And so, you know, the fact that it's first-person point of view narration affects that author's perspective. It might, you know, it's going to affect how they're telling the story. So they would compare like that part of first-person narration to third-person narration, where the person is outside of the story. They do not have those, you know, biases or event or like biases towards certain events and characters and that sort of thing. So it would be really basic, you know, I'm going into a little bit more detail, but it would be really basic differences between the different types of narration and the effect that has on the telling of the story. Does that help, Annie?
Yes, very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, awesome.
Would we just phrase it as compare and contrast the effects of points of views from which different stories are narrated? Or is that what's being compared and contrasted, the effects of those various points of view? Rather than the point of view themselves? Because I do think, I see where Ms. Dockery is saying, it kind of reads as, we're just, this one's first, this one's second.
I think it
We've
makes it
compared them.
just a little bit more rigorous.
It
Yes.
does.
Can you put that in the box for us? So we
Try to
could,
draft something. I don't know if I've got a perfect wording, but I can try.
we're getting close.
Okay, I don't necessarily love my wording, but I've got compare and contrast the effects of the points of views from which different stories are narrated.
I like that. This is really going to make a great distinction between point of view and perspective. I think people are going to get a better handle on it by doing this, both kids and the teachers. Does everybody like what is contained right now in cell 123 as written? If there are no objections, then let's keep it. I hear no objections. We're moving on.
Wait one second. Go back up and read the cornerstone on row 122 on F. It says how perspective point of view. Is there a comma or an or missing?
Oh, that's
Perspective
interesting.
point of- It's
That's a
different.
mistake. Yeah, because
Yeah.
it should be identical throughout. I think we're still trying to decide if point of view is going to show up in the cornerstone or not.
Well,
But it seems like
one way
this
or
is a
the
moment
other.
where
It's
yeah.
yeah, it's
Yes.
perspective or
Yes.
not, but it's not that.
And they should be all the same to Vice Chair Hilliard.
Yeah.
So I think
Yeah.
keep to us.
Whatever it is, it should be something that has the right words.
Yeah. Barring Tammy and Nicole's thoughts, I think it's fair to take out point of view on F122. At least so that you have something consistent to work from.
Okay, so we're gonna revisit that.
I will say about the cornerstone before we make a decision about perspective versus point of view. I don't like the word assess in the cornerstone. That's what we do as teachers.
Right.
Students evaluate or determine or analyze.
The language we're using in the high school standards is analyze. So I think it probably should read analyze.
I agree 100%.
Shape the content and style of a text.
Make note of that. Please. Are we ready to go on to RI now?
Okay. So we're sticking with 5RL then, comparing and
Yes.
contrast the effects of the points of views from which different stories.
I haven't heard any severe objections.
Okay. That's probably my least favorite wording I've done so far, so I don't love that one, but I'll take it.
Well, you've been at this for 4 hours, so.
Yeah, fair enough. 5RI reads, compare and contrast the perspectives in multiple accounts of the same event or topic. I see no qualms with that.
Anyone else? No? Hearing no objections, I think we are good through the elementary. I would suggest that we hold off on the middle school now until our next opportunity and allow our vice chair's brain a chance to revive. And everybody else's. We've been studying hard. This is considering a lot of different points of view, and everybody had just great quality input into this process. So I think it's time that we come to a conclusion in this meeting and then get ready to move on. So I would make a motion that we adjourn until our next meeting, which would be when?
Monday, September 29th.
At 3:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. I'll be on Eastern Time. Are there any other questions or comments from our panelists or our folks from TDOE?
I have one quick clarifying question about the standards, and I know no one wants to talk anymore about the standards, but I'm just going to ask really quickly. It seems we did not reach a consensus on whether or not point of view should be included in the cornerstone. So should I put that in the parking garage?
Yes, please.
Will do, because I mean, we're not going to be again together here for a week, so I don't want to forget it.
Here, I
Right.
got it. I got it. I put it in.
And I
Thank
think
you.
Ms. Niles about assess could also go in that parking garage item.
Yes.
That's all I had. Sorry.
No, that's
All
great.
right.
Don't lose the thread.
I'm looking for my script.
Chair Kanigas, you could say, with no further business of the committee, this meeting is adjourned.
With no further business of the committee, this meeting is adjourned. We'll see you next week in a brand new show.
Bye all. Thank you. Don't dream about the standards. Be safe.